Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
In terms of battlegrounds, it has been one where the story has been told by 4 drivers over the course of this major series, picking up wins. Jesper Eriksson, Garen Batten, Daniel Thomas, and your championship leader, Trevor Vavrovsky. He's got more points than anybody else in the major series at the moment, a lead of over 50 points, and with no Jesper Eriksson here, it's a lead of well over 130 points, and he'll be looking to try and maintain that margin here today. The battle is now going to be at America's home for racing, Charlotte Motor Speedway. The Roval is out in 2025 spec, and we're getting ready for round 10 of the European region of the major series. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're watching around the world. My name is Jake Sperry. Along with me for today's racing action is Craig King. Daniel Costello is in the director's chair. He's using the cameras provided by Dougie Beard. But when it comes to Charlotte Motor Speedway, there are many different Roval configurations and layouts that get great racing sorted. But for this layout that we're getting ourselves ready with today, let's have a little look at what makes the new version so quick with our GSRC track guide.
Welcome to Charlotte Motor Speedway. Until a few years ago, most race fans probably didn't know that this track had a road course layout. Thanks to a huge revamp to prepare for NASCAR to race on it, the Roval is now a top-tier facility. Situated in the northeast corner of Charlotte, North Carolina, there's a whopping 6 different road course layouts. They range from just under a mile to a little over 2 miles in length. Like most Rovals, the high-speed banking on the oval portion makes up the majority of the lap length. However, one unique feature that isn't often seen on other Rovals is that this track includes a decent amount of elevation change. Passing is often difficult, and the 2 chicanes on the oval portion are notorious for their unforgiving curbing. Lesser-powered cars find overtakes a bit easier with the slipstream on the banking, but anything with some oomph is going to have to work very hard to get by their rivals. If anything, attrition often rears its ugly head, and simply keeping the car pointed forward and clean will net you a good finish. While the debate rages on among gearheads on whether oval cars should race here, one thing is for sure, it provides some wild action and almost never disappoints the fans in the stands.
It's one of those circuits which has a little bit of the street feel about it in this Roval. Most people who come here and haven't driven a Roval look at this circuit and go, wow, this is actually some fantastic running. But today, it's about hold yourself steady. So I think, Craig, when you come to racing action, it's going to be about who gives themselves the opportunity, because it's a long old way today.
It's a long way to Tipperary, as we say over here, over the pond. But this is the track that has been really well popularized ever since it came into the NASCAR layouts there. Multiple changes since it first came here. Now it is only a 2.32 mile track, which this is the new version. We didn't see it on the intro there. It was used to be 2.28 as we now go over the hill at turn 5 to go into a straight right-hander at 6, which is going to be a big difference because that's an over the crest and then down the hill braking. And of course, they don't really have the race car brakes that we see in sports cars. These are brakes that they have to be really early onto the brakes. So that's going to be interesting. Bus stop at 10 into 12 as well. Always a danger zone here. So realistically, the drivers will have to keep it safe because there's only really 2 or 3 overtaking spots on this track today. But it does promise to be quite an epic race.
It's officially it's a 12-turn circuit as labeled in iRacing on the official map. given by Charlotte Motor Speedway. It is, in fact, a 17-turn circuit that they will have to navigate through today. So that all to keep in mind. Let's talk championship, though, and where we get ourselves ready for it, because it has been the story of the championship that one driver has been continually notching up the points. The other one has been taking great chunks out of it. Trevor Vavrosky has been that driver in total command in the championship, sat on 1,615 points, with Jesper Eriksson then for company behind on 1,561. You've then got Garen Batten and Daniel Thomas, who are third and fourth, with Edward Shelley in fifth. Oscar Fredriksson, not here today, is sixth, with Jeff Schmeier seventh, then leading Daniel Holmer and David H. Baker, 1 point between them, and then 2 points back of that, Wayne Hutchison making up the field as they go for that top 10. But I think it's interesting that with no Jesper Eriksson today, it's Garen Batten's responsibility to put a dent into the likes of Vavrosky.
Gonna be tough to put the lights into Vavrosky because he has looked a little bit quick out there today. America's home for racing, as they say. That's what Charlotte is. And of course, remember, the reason the Roval came into fruition in NASCAR was because Charlotte were like, we don't really want to run Charlotte Oval twice in a season, and we've got 2 dates. Let's use the infield, and it worked out so well. So I do wonder, because some of these drivers do have that oval pedigree today, how can they transfer the oval pedigree of this stock car to a racecraft? That's going to be the question these drivers have to challenge, because let's get the joke out the way, Jake. These cars aren't designed to turn right.
No, they're not. Fusion Gold Euro in control ahead of SimRace Sweden Esports. Dog Bear just 3 points back there in third ahead of Fusion Silver Euro. Composite Performance and Sportsman are fifth and sixth, with Udox Daisy and LDL Racing. Connection Lost Racing lost connection a while ago by the looks of it in the championship, with Fusion Bronze Euro then rounding out your top 10 as far as that goes. But Majors is one of those interesting series that we have here at the Global Sim Racing channel, where you don't have the same race twice. And Craig, I think that is going to be quite critical.
That will be critical as well out there, because you need to make sure that you use your opportunity. And one of the things we talk about, opportunities, drivers, they get a chance to do one race in the season which is not in their region, and you will see some names, if you're used to watching us on the European side, that aren't usual European drivers. They're American drivers, they're international drivers. They've come out here today, they've decided they want to have a race that's different to what the rest of their championship rivals are having.
They certainly do, and at the moment 400 kilometers is what they'll be battling. It's why it's known as a Roval 400 here today. 109 laps worth of action, and they will be keeping their eyes open on what they need to do. There are going to be a couple of interesting rules in terms of what the track rules give off. So driving below the double white line is permitted out there in terms of the race. The only exception of driving below the white line is on the apron in the high bank corners 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. At turn 16, which is the right of the final chicane, you do have the ability to keep 2 tires on the red and white curbing to avoid an off-track or a slowdown penalty. So if you're too aggressive through that corner, you are going to see drivers have a very late slowdown penalty, which is 40 seconds unserved if you can't get it slowed down through the final corner. Qualifying currently underway, 15 minutes or 4 laps. Garen Batten on screen on his 4th lap.
Yeah, Garen Batten on screen. Just saw him coming out of that turn 7, which that's going to be a danger point for some of these drivers today, because that's the new corner. A very tight a hairpin there, kind of doubles up and you see what they can do. But now that 61 is coming in to the bus stop. A little bit calm there, can go down that apron, come straight back up, and he needs a good time out here. He's already almost a second and a half away from pole position. That's Dallas Pataska, who's come over here just for the day, and now onto the braking. What I like here, that's AstroTurf there just on the left. They can use a little bit of that runoff just to get an open line, and he kind of needed that as he had that spin at the end of the lap.
Yeah, and so with that drop through the final corner, that's going to be no improvement from 6th place to get that sorted. And it does now leave only a handful of drivers out there on circuit. Ray Partridge is through on all of his laps. David H. Baker currently out there on his final attempt then to move up from 15th. His best is a 26.7, so he'll need to improve to the tune of 2.6 to jump up as Jeff Schmeier goes 9th fastest overall, trying to get that Chevrolet stopped into the final section, drive it off of the exit and head for the line. That's a 122.5 and good enough for a top 10.
Well, he drove his Chevy to the levee, and the levee got him a top 10 there. And now you see Daniel Thomas as well. He's got a couple laps left. There's 4 minutes. They get 4 laps out here today to do for qualifying, and now he'll go on to the brakes. The number 60 Chevy now trying to get that stopped. You can see a little bit of a wiggle as he was trying to get that stopped as well into the brakes. Remember, they kind of have to flip the throttle here a little bit to get these cars to shift down. I haven't driven these next gens around here. I have driven the old ones, but Daniel's not happy here, and I think that's probably him going to go into the pits. May even just call it a day for that, because pretty happy. Jeff Schmeier is the last man. I think there's a couple more last man that could go, and I can confirm Daniel is going to give it one more go.
Well, he's clever there. He realizes, well, the only thing I can do is reset the car, get myself some new tires, and have one final attempt at it for lap number 4. Here is Jeff Schmeier on his 3rd attempt for Dog Bear as he works into that final chicane and doesn't have any luck with it and decides, you know what, I'm going to pull it over to one side, try and open up my attack for another chance. Now, we talk about drivers who are here today who are looking to try and score points in a different championship. So Dallas Pataska's 13th overall in the Americas Championship. Robert Northway is trying to score when it comes to the Oceania region. The Kiwi trying to make some effort, hoping that's going to work, but that for the moment then isn't quite the way that is wanting to be scored. And Robert Northway coming in today, by the way, 3rd in the Kiwi SimRacing Speed Nation machine in international championship running. And so that leaves the case of the only other driver, which is Ray Partridge, who is here today. He's 14 in Americas.
Yeah, you could just see as well when Robert went over that crest at 5, you can just see what it is like nowadays, because the old days, you would turn off earlier up the hill and then do a little bit of a weave, but now it's just a straight, it opens up the turn a little bit flatter in terms of speed, but these cars don't have that downforce to hold them down over that hill. As Daniel Thomas now getting ready to do his final lap, because this is all he's got. He did have that lap 3, which just was an outlap, and now he's going to have a go out here, and look how wide he goes out of 4. Use all this runoff to your advantage, opens up the corner for 5. Avoid the turtle curves that they say in America. Use that as well. Avoid the tires. Really flirting. Jake said it was like a street circuit. You can see why. You flirt with the tire barriers hard into 7. And realistically, to me, it feels almost like that hairpin at Kota at the end of the track here, Jake, where you kind of have to open up by going wide in and then fast out.
Yeah, and then when you attack, you got the oval banking to help you through the corners. And because we're in Euro speak, I'm sure we can use Euro kilometers an hour out there, because they were doing over 250, too heavy over the curb. Daniel Thomas plants himself in the barriers, and the Welshman will find that there's nothing better than that. Ray Partridge out there, no lap time set either by Håkan Schurt, who is the Swede down at the bottom of the field. Robert Northway, the only other driver then who has yet to put a time on the board, and with 1:28, this will be his last attempt, and he is not wheeling with anything of any speed out there when 15 minutes expires out there, Craig. That will be that in terms of qualifying, and that gives you an understanding of how tough it is. Bounces over the curbs and into the safer barrier.
Yeah, Ray Partridge just getting a couple more laps in, but Ray will not get this lap to finish, as Robert Northway kind of having a little bit of a Hamilton moment out there today. Kind of wondering where the brakes were for him, as he just could not slow that down in time with Partridge. It looks like, don't think he's going to get any more time to do this. 52 seconds left on the clock. They'll have to have a lap of the gods really to get through this, but it just goes to show. And just look how much he's struggling getting through that corner. And of course, you can't open up the throttle. You can't light up the throttle around that turn 7, because you will spin the rear tires. And that's another thing we got to talk about here, is smooth is fast out here. Be interesting. 30 seconds to go. Let's see how he attacks this. Interestingly, not wanting to take the sausage curves. We'll see that in different ways from these drivers out here today. Do you attack the sausage curves? Do you not? Let's just hold on, though. 18 seconds to go. It's going to be very tight at the line, but I think he may just have it.
Yeah, so he will be able to reach the line, but he is out of all of his laps, and he'll overcook it into the final chicane and scamper across the Legends layout there down at the bottom, and that will sort things out. Qualifying then in the books, and they are going to line up as follows here in your European region with racing action. Dallas Pataska needing to capitalize on his points haul today and jump up the order. Will do so on a 120.083, a full 0.8 of a second clear of Michael Hafler-Darson, who's running on a reduced schedule this season, looking to make a bigger challenge next year. Edward Shelley will start in third with Daniel Thomas in fourth position. It's then Trevor Vavrovsky, who is the championship leader in fifth, and his nearest challenger today, Garen Batten, is alongside in sixth position. Tom Guest and Stephen Vivian will be seventh and eighth, with Jeff Schmeier in ninth, along with David H. Baker in 10th.
When we get to the second page, and it will be Kyle Graham, who will be into 11th with Gary Thomas alongside him in 12th. Sebastian Jackson will be that unlucky 13th with Wayne Hutchinson beside him in 14th. And then it's Joshua Hampton in 15th, followed by Ray Partridge, who we saw at the end there in 16th. That was the last of the time qualifiers as Hacken Schutt unable to set a lap time. Robert Northway in practice would have had a time good enough for the first 3 rows. Unfortunately, he will be there in 18th. And Bill Daly will round out your 19 NASCAR Next Gen cars.
I believe Bill will be running today race control from pit lane. So, unfortunately, he's brought his car along, so he'll be officially classified as an entry here today. But I doubt we're going to be seeing him actually running and racing. So, 18, I think, is what we're going to get for 109 laps worth of racing action. And so as they get themselves set and ready, they will have a full pace lap to get themselves into the racing groove for today's action. Now, track temperature at the moment sits at 29 degrees Celsius here at this stage. So I would say that's in the cold to ideal range that we've got out there at the moment. And so when you've got that ability to say that's how hot it is, I would say this is the perfect day for racing that we have got ourselves with. In sim time, by the way, is just ticked over 1:30 in the afternoon. So we are at the top of everything going forward, and they will get themselves set, leaving pit lane out of turn 2, heading to the Bank of America turn at turn number 3. And now really a chance of different styles of racing coming into play and different goals and opportunities there. For the likes of Pataska, this is a different championship attached to it. Hafler-Darson will want some progress and pace, and I'd look at Edward Shelley as well. He's still on the outside looking in, trying to think about a championship effort. So if Edward Shelley picks up a win today, I would say that's his championship aspirations back alive.
Yeah, and they still got a handful of races left in the championship. I think it's 2 or 3 left at the top of my head. My number's not that very good at the moment, so that would be one to look at. You talk about the track temperature. Let's talk about that as well, because the air temperature, 23 Celsius, and by the end of the race, it's only going to go up 1 degree to 24 Celsius. So this track temp in theory will stay around where it is at the moment. And the wind, well, this is interesting. It's 20 kilometers north. That means it's a tailwind coming to the chicane. And that is going to be very interesting. We did see Ray Partridge having a moment in qualifying, just overshooting. That could be very interesting to some of these drivers when they come full racing, because not only are you looking at getting the overspeed from slipstream here, you're also getting that overspeed because the wind will be assisting you.
Yeah, and you think that cars as heavy as these aren't going to have any issues at all as they hit the brakes and run into these corners, but you'll be surprised how much they get picked up and how sensitive they are when they go into these corners. So if it is blowing a gale as it is here today, they're going to have a lot of work to do when they hit the brakes into these various chicanes. With 109 laps and the 400 kilometers that is available, they still have a Bathurst 500 on the horizon to navigate through, and a Japanese Grand Prix on top of that in November. So this, the last of the ovals then for the course of this season. So for the oval specialists, the last chance to say this is what my points haul matters to me. The iRacing Porsche first safety car will make a pivot over to the inside and will take pit lane. Keep an eye out on green flag pit stops here today as well, because we are going to get ourselves set and ready under the control of number 24 at Satellite Racing. Dallas Pataska gets the green flag, and we are underway here from Charlotte Motor Speedway, and it's a clean start into turn number 1. A bit of side-by-side as the likes of Tom Guest worked hard against Stephen Vervian as they work through the opening corners, out of turn 2 into Bank of America at 3.
Real good start from the driver. Robert Northway in the background looking to make up a 3rd spot, and he will as well. So he's gone up the order in the early days, but it's a very clean start for these drivers, and now they get to settle in a little bit. Ravoski, this is the man we need to keep our eyes on as well. But Graham into the wall, and that's a combination of those cold tires still heating up and just a lot of battling there. I believe he was side by side earlier in the race with, I think, Baker.
Well, that shows you how tough it is out there. You get one hit like that and it causes troubles for him, but he will now drop down the order, but he doesn't have a black and orange mechanical flag tied next to his name, so he's got away with one to start things off. Gary Thomas has lost one off of the start. He's down in 13th, chasing Robert Northway, who's had a wonderful start to this race. He's up 6 spots off of the get-go from 18th to 12th, so he will now try and run through, and again, Carl Graham overshoots it then going into the chicane and has to give the time up.
Yeah, it's interesting. Remember, in the real world, when it comes, if you miss one of these chicanes in the real world NASCAR, you actually have to come to a complete stop. And another driver missing out as well, which is Josh Hampton, having a little bit of a miss. That was Kyle Graham's into the pits with repaired. They do have a fast repair, so they will have
Vervian.
Oh, Vervian's in the wall. Vervian's taken a heavy hit into the wall.
He's done it on his own. He's just been too greedy on the power out of Heartburn Corner, turn number 1, and he has nosed it heavily into the barriers. And on lap 2, Stephen Vervian becomes a trouble spot then. That Chevrolet has got a lot that it needs to do to get itself piloting around. It is still declared as okay, but it's taken a hefty whack.
Taking a hefty whack, and again, you look at what could happen with those cars, but he may be able to get a good run here. Talking of a good run, Bravoski's having a real nice run here on Daniel Thomas, but he'll have to do it around the outside of 10, and there will be some room for both these drivers, but then it tightens up. But that's a bit of a mistake there, trying to slow it down for Daniel Thomas, and he's going to lose not just that 1 position, he's going to lose a further 2 positions to Batten and Guest. Just trying to give it a little bit too much room, I feel.
Well, I think it's a very unfair advantage that Trevor Vavrovski's got against Daniel Thomas, because Trevor Vavrovski's clearly in a Mazda 787B.
Yes, but at the same time, that's a car that probably had brakes just as good as these next-gen cars because of how old it is. Remember, we're talking late 80s, early 90s superiority, Jake. That car didn't exactly have the best of brakes.
No, and so because of those brakes, you start looking around and saying, this is why you've got to be very alert out there. Here's Sebastian Jackson in the middle of this group. Robert Northway's on the back of it. David H. Baker in front and Jeff Schmeier. So that gives you all you need to know about where this group lies. 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th, up the hill through 5. And look at this. It's a plateau braking zone at turn 6 now. And that's going to be a nightmare to get correct, because if you run ever so slightly wide on the brakes, you know, you are just crossed up every which way from Sunday at the hairpin. Good run that comes along from Robert Northway, and now's going to get the launch.
Glad you said Plateau and not Plato, because I thought a stock car, a touring car braking. No, Jason Plato's not here, but real good. But you can see the difference. Jackson more confident on braking later, but I think he broke way too late there. Had to take a little bit of a hit, and Robert Northway, well, had to take the slow down. Probably will keep that position. Not how he wanted to do it, though. A little bit of a mistake there in the background from Sebastian Jackson. But yeah, let's have a look at that on some more replays. It's very interesting. This is the Bavarian incident. Look at it, too hot, as he was saying. Also trying to do it while turning there, Jake. I wonder if that just upset the balance of the car.
It certainly would have done. And when you're turning and braking at the same time on a car that doesn't like, pointing any way other than straight and left. It's always going to be tough to try and hold it back up together once more. Sebastian Jackson elected not to go through on Robert Northway because of the hit to the rear that he gave Robert going through that section, and said, look, that's my bad, I'm not going to take that place. It's brought Gary Thomas and the recovering Stephen Vervieren back into this group and said, right, this is all we need to know. At the front, it's 2.4 seconds, the margin now for Dallas Pataska over Michael Hafler-Darson. So that gives you a sense of what the gap looks like at the front. But Vervieren now looks to try and work in the toe and give himself what he needs, which is an opportunity to run with Gary Thomas and say, right, how do I get myself back into rhythm and understand what I need to do into the left-right chicane of 10, 11 and 12.
Context, the gap between Vervieren and Pataska is 18 seconds. So the way I would look at this for Vervieren is to learn how these drivers are braking for turn 10 into the bus stop, because you don't want to outbrake yourself if you know they're going to be braking deep and making a mistake themselves. So he's going to give this next lap probably a go to look. I say that, he just went into the back of Gary Thomas, who I think may have missed a shift there. So that's not going to help. He's going to be losing time again, and this time stacks up because that's a 1:24, and we know the pace that Vervieren can do. So it's very interesting to see. He really needs some time. If we go for another replay, this was this moment, and that's not what you're meant to do to a stock car.
No, up on two wheels, and so you get the influx of grip late, and so Daniel Thomas has to bail out of it by a mile as those two Fusion cars make their progress through. As we take a look on lap 5 with your race leader, Dallas Pataska, and 3 seconds clear. Now, this is a key that we're going to be keeping an eye out on here. He's doing lap times in the 1:20s. He's about 0.4 of a second a lap quicker, and so over 109 laps, when you're looking around, I don't think he's going to lap the whole field, but he's going to get pretty close.
He'll get close, but I do wonder if he can actually do it, because you never know. These drivers, they may all have a problem, and they may have to take the pit, and that's it. We're looking at Michael Hafler-Darson, as he goes on. Gary Thomas having a moment out of the bus stop, and that allowed Jackson and Vervieren to go through. Jackson and Thomas were side by side out of 7, as we see the replay from Ray Partridge. 7 as well, having a bit of an issue out there as well. They were side by side coming out of that, and that held up Vervieren. And he is just there thinking, I can't be held up here. I need to get up the field, but everyone's just fighting very competitively at the moment.
Robert Northway again looking for another one here. He's the Kiwi trying to find an angle on Jeff Schmeier in the number 30 for Dog Bear, looking off for the exit here for good drive. That will lead this short shoot run over to turn number 5, back up the hill once again and over the crest for turn 6, which is only down at 130 kilometers an hour through the middle before you have to jam on the brakes, get it slowed down to just 60, under 60 kilometers an hour. There's no drive for Jeff off the exit. He hangs it up high and says, I know when I'm a beaten driver. Through goes Robert Northway. He now finds himself into 9th.
Smyer decided to tap out there, and I think a lot of it was because he took it too tight of a line. And you saw Northway really try to open up the corner there to make that move, but Vervieren, he's going to try and do this as well. He is going to be fighting at Jackson. They both make a mistake. Is he in the wall? Vervieren hits the wall. And I tell you what, that's a heavy hit into the wall here. That could be problems for him. He may, when they come to the first pit stop, have to take a fast repair. But all that work he's done has just gone to naught. And Jackson, he couldn't even make the corner. He outbraked himself.
They have one spare car available to them over the course of this race. Unlimited tyres, that's very slow by Gary Thomas going through the final chicane. He was trying everything not to overcook it, and I was seeing the brakes glow as he was running through that section. So really having to try and get the car slowed and stopped for Stephen Vervieren. This is a case of 3 Canadians in a row, Vervieren, Jackson and Hutchison, all there together trying to get by the one Brit, Gary Thomas.
Well, it does sound like it's a Commonwealth blanket we need to put over them, because it is still all grouped up together. But now you've got to ask yourself, if you're Vervieren, you've lost more time due to these moments. How do you break Jackson? How do you get past him? He's running the 87 as well for Jackson. I don't think he's going to do any punting today, like a certain influencer has as one of his trademarks with that 87. However, Ryan needs to find a way through, and he knows that Jackson now, if he goes side by side, will outbrake himself. So maybe this isn't the place to be looking for an overtake now for Steven. He's going to have to wait to see Sebastian make a mistake, and then it doesn't help that Wayne Hutchinson in front also makes a mistake. They are all tripping over each other.
They very much are, and it's one of those days where if you do trip up and run yourself into troubles, you are going to have a long day at the office, and this is what we're seeing again, a pivot to the inside. There's not really an angle to attack. They have changed that chicane in various guises, and I think that apex entry of turn 15 or turn 16 into turn 17 is a lot tighter than it used to be. It was a very quick flick at the end of the lap when they first introduced it, so they've reprofiled that, given it a little bit more shape to it, which should slow down the speed. This is second and third, so Edward Shelley is still on the hunt here, keeping pace equal to Michael Hafler-Darson at this stage, but that gap is about 1.4 seconds at the moment. So Edward Shelley is going to have to try and settle into the rhythm, and it's not just about how quick you are in early pace, it's about how good the long pace is on the tyres.
Yeah, these tyres wear out bad. Even on a road course, they're not the best of tyres. Think of the power that they have to go and transfer. So Hafler-Darson having to just match Shelley, and he's been doing that. Credit where credit's due. Been matching each other on pace here. That's all he needs to do until they come to the later runs. They come across the line once again. 21.9, 21.6. So Shelley is starting to close up, and this man, Bravosky, behind, he's nowhere to be found at the moment at 21.7. He's also matching, so his third down to fourth are basically identical. It was just who got the better launcher at the start. Pataska has gone, unfortunately.
Yeah, he has bolted pretty much straight out of the blocks here, and they are going to struggle to catch at this moment with the way that Dallas Pataska has ran off at the front of this field, and will now be looking to try and make as much of a charge as possible heading through to the middle of this race, which will be coming up in about the next 30 to 40 laps. With Vavrosky, we had a little look there with the 787B Mustang. Yes, you are seeing that correctly, in fourth position. Will now be trying to hunt down. But then there is still the case of the direct threat behind of Garen Batten, who's not running the same pace. He's about half a second a lap slower at the moment compared to Trevor Vavrosky. But he's still there, and this is one of those things, when you get a big gap in a race like this, it's very easy to switch off on some of these laps and find the mistake that comes in that gives you what you need. So this is one of those circuits where I think it's very resource intensive.
It's very resource intensive, and it's also mentally taxing. Now, the NIS races that you would get on iRacing are half-distance races. So they're not doing the 109 laps. They're doing about 54 laps around here. And that's tough in itself, because you'll take a pit stop around lap 20. And you think you're doing 20 laps here, and the first cycle comes. We're watching Daniel Thomas having that, trying to catch up as well. He gets behind. The first cycle catches up to you, and you think, okay, fine. You get to your second pit cycle, and that's where the concentration starts to dip. That's when you'll start to see more mistakes happen by some drivers you don't expect to make the mistakes, because it is hard to constantly repeat the same process lap after lap, corner after corner. So I do wonder who will be the first driver out there to crack under that repetitive pressure.
Well, at the moment, Michael Hafler-Darson is chasing down what he needs at this moment in time. He is making life difficult here, knowing with Edward Shelley fifth in the championship, 1,347 points. He's going to want to jump Daniel Thomas, who's in sixth place. He's going to want to jump Garen Batten, who's in fifth place, and be the nearest challenger and the best of the Fusion Gold Euro cars out there. He gets a great run, because that was trouble for Michael Hafler-Darson. He'll defend it at turn number one, as he had to cut the chicane, overcooking it. Now here at turn two, it's a case that Hafler-Darson's got his coverage, but now Edward Shelley's been allowed into the party. So I don't think there's much that Michael Hafler-Darson can do, except do not keep making those mistakes.
You kind of want to catch up to Pataska, even though it's tough to catch up with Pataska with the pace he's exerting. However, that's not going to help your battles here, and the gap now is 7 seconds to the leader, but you've got to look behind. And the last thing you want to do on a Roval is look behind you. You want to keep your eyes forward, and Shelley is now hunting. And remember, the pace was practically matching. So you do have to ask yourself, what's it going to take to give? And we talk about that mental pressure, we talk about the exertion. That could be a thing. And is that a bit of lifting there from Michael Hafnarson? Because Shelley caught up to him really quickly there. I wonder if he's trying to eke out a few more laps when it comes to a fuel stint.
Well, if it's the difference today between a one-stop and a two-stop race, that is interesting.
And I do wonder if that is what he's looking at, because that could be big in the scale of things. We'll have to look, again, with how long these sort of races are, we'll have to look probably near the end, give it the last 30 laps or so till we know who's on what sort of strategy. But it could be at the end of that could be what the difference is. Just the idea that someone took that. And we also go think, you eke out an extra few laps on fuel. What about the tire wear? Are you going to be running more tire wear? Are you going to be using less tire wear? Be interesting to see. And I'll tell you, somebody who's using a lot of tire wear and a lot of fuel and probably using a lot of words in that helmet right now, Bavine still can't get past Sebastian Jackson.
Now, Seb's done a great job of keeping Stephen Bavine bottled up here in 14th position, running through turn 4 and looking for that drive off of the exit. As we know, here around this circuit at Charlotte Motor Speedway, they're running with the NASCAR track limits out there, which is to say there aren't really many.
No, and I do like that iRacing now has that ability on some of the tracks. If you haven't tried that, just go. It's a little bit of a slide there from Ryan. I think he's trying to keep it in the track limits. Don't need to. If you haven't tried it, there are NASCAR layouts nowadays on iRacing with those track limits. Trying to use the track limits at COTA. You can't anymore on a NASCAR layout. Same with Watkins Glen. It's really good. And now the drivers have that ability to just open up and just go for that, which I think is really good, because at the end of the day, there is no drive-through for incident points today. So that's an interesting one. They are just able to just drive on out there.
They are, and Sebastian Jackson able to keep himself steady now. A bridge between divides at the moment with Wayne Hutchison just in front. So keep that focus very much where it is at this moment in time, with the likes of Stephen Bavine behind. So those three all together and giving themselves everything that they could possibly want. It's worth noting as well, over the last 6 or 7 laps or so, David H. Baker's lost the place to Robert Northway, who is on the hunt to try and get back to Tom Guest. So that would be for 7th position out there at this moment in time. So a lot of shake-ups still needing to go on lap 13 here of 109. Stephen Bavine close and really trying to get that pivot line through 6 to open up 7. Has to deal with a bucket of understeer through the middle of the corner. But if Sebastian Jackson can't get it turned to the left quick enough at that sharp hairpin turn 7, it's only going to open up chances for Bavine once the banking hits.
But the problem is Bavine wants to get on the throttle coming out of 7 with such a good run. But to get up there with all the throttle, he has to allow that car to track up to the wall. And this may be it, that mistake there from Jackson. No, Bavine holds on again. He has that move. He's quicker in the middle of the corner at the apex than it was to Jackson. But because of where Jackson's car was, Bavine had to get off the throttle. And that is really proving an issue right now, because it feels like Bavine could easily just take that move and go for it. But I think now, it's so close, almost half a car, and just still can't make that move. But you can see with the way Jackson's driving, the pressure is starting to kick in, and he's starting to make a lot of interesting moves. Rare send into 4. Well done, Stephen Bavine. That's a rare one into turn 3. I apologize, I got my corner numbers wrong.
Well, that is what happens when you throw it down the inside. This isn't a series, so to speak, especially when you're using NASCAR-style cars here, Craig, where you sit down and say, oh, I'll just daintily go through and, oh no, I brushed a fender. It's not like one of those. It's a case of you get your elbows out and you use the machinery, and that could have very easily have been car in the safer barrier there for Stephen Bavine. So all that work of the surprise move to get it done, and there goes 87 back down the inside. Sebastian Jackson gets his pass back.
try to make a move that was as surprising as Chris Ludham last night, and it turned out to be a finish that was like Fernando Alonso, but now they're both making mistakes, and for the second time in a row, Jackson has a mistake through the bus stop. And there is a little bit of overlap, but Vivian's having to take such a high line, he's losing out time here, so he can't hold that line to give him the inside here for turn 15, 16, and then 17. And again, he's getting bunched up, but now Jackson knows, hello, you can make that overtake into turn 3. I don't think I like that. He may have to be a little bit more defensive, and more defensive means more tire wear, means less time on the board, and also just a lot of headaches for both drivers.
Here we go.
Kelly looking for a move.
Down the inside, Michael Hafler needs to leave the room. He caught the inside curb. Shelley's going to go around for a good 360, and he will lose the place to Trevor Vavrosky, who moves up onto the podium. Just like that, Edward Shelley, there with one move trying to go for second, is now fourth.
Oh, and you know what? It was not caused there from Hafler. It was all Shelley. And Jackson's now gone off as well. That was Shelley. He just cut too much of the curb, and the car just stepped out on the rear, and it just sent him around. It wasn't contact that caused the spin. It was just Shelley just taking too tight of a line to try and hold it. So you've got to give a hats off to Michael there for making that overtake, as now Kyle Graham still at the back of the field. But it looks like he's just about to get lapped, or has been lapped. Nope, the drivers are right behind. He'll be getting lapped very soon. But yeah, we just saw that as well. Jackson going off as well, giving Revian finally the space he needs. And Ray Partridge, not talked a lot about him since the start. He's still there, but he was down one position.
Yeah, the issue being that Vivian and Jackson did actually come together when they were running through at turn 6. So that one, I think, is going to be very interesting to see if we can get a replay of that, as that has put itself together. But Ray Partridge here, this is the battle for the wooden spoon at the moment, with Kyle Graham there just behind, Hawkins Shirt then just in front of that. That's not great drive from Ray, and it's got to be Kyle who goes to the inside, gets his pass sorted, and finally gets himself out of 18.
Have a look at this replay with Vivian there and Jackson, and this is going to be an interesting one because he gets a better run, because it looks like Jackson did not have a good turn 5. Comes into 6. Now, this is an F1, so I'm not going to do the F1. He was ahead of the apex right away, but you feel that Vivian did have a gap there, but that's not a corner you can attack so early into the curb. But I do feel that was more racing incident, more than one driver being a bit too careless. It just felt like there was space there on the left that could have been done. Regardless, he has finally got through. I don't think it was the way Stephen wanted to get through, though.
I think Stephen Vivian was too aggressive there. I think that he's gone for the inside, and he was over the connection point, which leads on the very long section of this circuit. It was a fight for the inside. I don't think he got fully alongside the A-pillar, which would have allowed for that sort of pass to be, or the space to be allowed. And so I think that one is on Stephen Vivian, just trying to be a little bit too aggro against Sebastian Jackson, going, ooh, opportunity, and then the contact comes into play. But it is 12 seconds of a lead through 17 laps for Dallas Pataska. There's a car in the wall in front of him, and it's Hawkins Shirt, then the Swede, who has found himself wrong place, wrong time. No contact for him. He's just over-rotated through the first part. The car's just not responded back, and he has just nosed it into the safer barrier.
Yeah, here he goes, and you can just see that just taking too much of a bump. That rear just started to kick out again, and that rear is so important for these cars, because the only bit of downforce they've got is that little itty-bitty wing that basically just plexiglass sometimes, and that's the only thing keeping that rear just trying to lock down. And if you do upset the rear and you try to get on the throttle, the rear's just going to say bye-bye, and I don't think that's an NSYNC song, because the last thing you want is to cry me a river.
No, you definitely don't. Trevor Vavrosky then in third position. That gap now 2.8 seconds at this moment in time. So those 2.8 seconds is now down to 2.2, hitting in towards the turn 7 hairpin and looking to launch over towards that chicane once again. Vavrosky, I think, was a little bit slow starting in terms of this race, being in 5th position, but he's slowly worked up the courage to gain those places. And so as he's been getting better and better into it, he absolutely brutalizes the inside curb there at turn 10. But I think that Trevor Varosky here is actually driving a very nice race here, and Edward Shelley has every impetus to try and chase this down, knowing he's quicker than Hafler-Darson, and he wants to think he's quicker than Trevor as well.
But is he? That's the question, because you look at it's hard to look at the lap times because, you know, Varosky didn't set a official lap. Now he does at the 22.2, Shelley at 22.4. So they're kind of matching. But if you're kind of matching, that's not a good thing because we are on lap 19 of 109. Matching's not going to get it done. Being a few tenths ahead is what's going to get it done, and also controlling. So now you've got to think as well. And you've got to also remember, if you start battling too much, Garen Batten is behind you. Not having the best of times last time out, but he's in an own little battle with Daniel Thomas. So if Shelley and Varosky start to get together, they're going to be bringing 2 other cars in. And I think really 2's better than 4, because at least then you know who your dance partner is when it comes into battling, and that's what he's going to be looking for.
Yeah, and this is going to be a good battling track. And again, because we were keeping an eye on Hafler-Darson, who was having to lift off into a couple of corners, trying to play a bit of a fuel save card out there today. If this is going to be a fuel saver in terms of how they work out this race, I would argue the point right now here, Craig, that you want to have a drafting buddy out there on circuit, because you've got various elements of this track that it is so beneficial to be in the tow that you can save yourself a couple laps worth of fuel. I'd love a couple laps. I wouldn't love a slide like that on the exit. Jeff Schmeier a little quick to the power, and so to the outside goes Gary Thomas, looking to get things sorted as now he finds the move, because Jeff is very early on the brakes and almost runs and does run into the back of him, and that is a dramatic instant for Gary Thomas. Just about keeps out the barriers, gives it an endo for a little bit more, and Wayne Hutchison will come through, and so too will Stephen Vivian, and Jeff Schmeier's had to get on with his race right now because he knows I can't slow it up any more than that.
Yeah, and I do wonder if that was that lift, because he lifted to allow Gary through. He gave up the position right away. Then he went straight back right behind Thomas there, and I think he just missed over his braking point, or didn't realize that, you know, even though I've lifted, I could just give it a little bit more. Just making that moment out there not good for him at all. He'll have to keep on going. Jeff Schmeier still trying to serve a slowdown as well. This could be important if he doesn't serve it in time. And just as I say that, he gets the black flag. I am the bearer of bad news. I am not causing a commentator's curse. Schmeier is going to have to take a drive through.
Yep, you only got a certain amount of time to serve any penalties that are out there that say, I've gone a little bit too quick. So with a black flag next to his name, he's going to have to come down the lane. Oh, there's a car in the wall over at turn 1. I think it's Seb Jackson who's found himself in there. And so that for him is another dramatic moment. And that's right in front of second and third then as they go through. So Hafler-Darson had to jump his way through, and it's a bit easier for Varosky. So suddenly that group's back together again. Sebastian Jackson in the wall at turn 1, and did so just by overcooking it on the brakes.
He's done that a couple times now, and it's been going from bad to, well, he did it in the bus stop at 16 and 17, but there you go. Hard into the termed heartbreak zone, as they said in America a few years ago. And that's why it was called the heartache turn, because you make that mistake and you have a big ache there. And that's unfortunate there for Jackson. But this has helped Ravosky right now, and they see more cars ahead. Blue flags are not mandatory. They are advisory. But for Schutz, you've got to feel that maybe I'm just going to have to let them go, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes high here, and that's what he's doing. But he crossed over that line from Michael Hafler-Darson. Did hold up to them a little bit, but it's been able to still keep that gap for Ravosky. Big time battle here. Now Michael needs to push on.
As that's happened, there's been a giveaway of position. A bit deep into the corner went Tom Guest, and through went Robert Northway, and Vivian's getting himself busy now with Jeff Schmeier, who, remember, has still got to serve that penalty. He's overcooked it. He tags the wall, and he's going to get a big drive off the exit straight into the side of Gary Thomas, who would have been blindsided by how far away he was going through that section. So a big old hit there for Gary Thomas, but there's not much you can do. Jeff Schmeier with the penalty, still finding himself a major part of battling here in the mid-pack.
Yeah, Vivian's just gone a little bit stressed out there. I wonder if he's just lost his cool after everything, because that was some hard driving, and he made that mistake as well. Here's the battle for P2. Ravoski does get past Hafnarson, or does he? Because now they're able to just keep on going, and the inside will belong to the 81 of Hafnarson. Ravoski's going to have to hold on, and like that 787B, just doesn't have the pace in the straights. But I don't think that's a Toyota in front of Hafnarson. It's going to make more trouble going over those curbs.
It's Ford Mustang versus Ford Mustang out there. So the Alcantech Mustang against the Mazda 787B Mustang out there is going to have a really good scrap. They've got more traffic in front. That will be Ray Partridge that they've got to work their way around, as in is Jeff Schmeier now to serve his penalty before he gets himself back out and going once again. The incident with Stephen Vivian out there and Gary Thomas is currently under review by Bill Daly in the stewarding office, as Vavroski now looks to try and open up turn number 4. If the drive off the exit is there as Ray gets out of the way, you now need to start thinking about, okay, turn 5, turn 6, am I going to find enough out there that's going to open up my opportunity? Great drive from Vavroski here. Could have had a little look to the inside at 7, but again, he's trying to get nice and neat on the exit to get that drive, and ultimately by being too acute through the corner, it's off the exit where Hafnarson gets his few car lengths.
And by being too acute, he actually hit a yellow bump in the inside of turn 7, and that just jolted the car a little bit, moved the car where he wasn't expecting it as well. So not only did he have a little bit of bottoming out on the underbody of this car, he also then just had a little shove. So that did not help Ravoski out there, and got to feel that he's there. And now it's going to be interesting to see how he tackles this over how we saw Vivian try to tackle earlier, because there's going to be issues, and then they're just putting the pressure on Hafnarson again, getting a bit too aggressive on the throttle coming out of turn 17, and that's just not going to help. And I'll tell you one thing I've noticed, these drivers are having issues at turn 7. They're trying to open the corner up too much and clipping the grass. Remember I said the AstroTurf was there to help at turn 15, 16, and 17? No AstroTurf there at turn 7. I do wonder if that's a design flaw.
I'm looking at Michael Hafnarson. He's got a car that's loose at the moment, and you'd rather have a car that's loose rather than tight. Tight is understeer and loose is oversteer, and the way he's applying the power down is difficult. For Vavroski to the outside then, trying to get the launch. It's covered. Oh, Trevor goes around. No contact at all as he tried to get the drive off the exit. He was just too eager on the power, and we talk about it. Noisy pedal, you've got revs to play with, but it's not one of these cars that's going to take forever to respond. It lights up those tyres quite quick.
And the issue there as well started as they actually...
Oh, Shelley's straight on.
Yeah, Shelley's gone straight on. So is Ray Partridge. I think Ray did that just to get out of the traffic. I'm not sure. The issue there was Ravoski went side by side, and he tried to open the corner up onto on Hafnarson there, and that's never going to work, because you can't open the corner up with how that corner finishes. So I think that he just got a little bit of the hot foot there, a rush of blood to the head, as Radiohead once said. But just a tough position to be in. Ravoski cannot use that corner to make an overtake right now, because he's being too quick in the infield for Hafnarson. And this is the thing that some of these drivers are having right now, Drake. They're too quick when they're catching up to someone in this infield. We saw that with Vivian. We're seeing this now with Ravoski.
Yep, so you are seeing how difficult this phase of the race is, because they are long in the stint at this moment in time. They'll be thinking about their fuel numbers, they'll be thinking about what the tyres are doing. The longer they go, the more troublesome it is going to be. And Vavroski now behind Edward Shelley is going to want to try and find a way through. A lot better this time through the corner, but Edward Shelley is earlier to the power and so can start running away. And I just want to give a little bit of an understanding of what Dallas Pataska is doing at the front of this field in terms of what tyre drop-off looks like at this moment in time. So his best lap was a 120.7. This lap was a 122.1. So they're already down 1.5 seconds almost by the way they are going about and doing what they need to do. So I think this is an important phase of the race where they are now dealing with tyre wear and what the car will allow them to do, be it their Ford Mustang, be it their Chevrolet Camaro or their Toyota Camry.
Garen Batten comes into the pit, obviously, to get a bit of a change. Now, let's talk about what happens. And if this was America, they'd be looking at a cutaway car right now. But what they look at when we talk about this tyre wear is this means that now the grip is going. And they're going to have to deal with a lot more understeer. It's going to be tight out there. And then you get on the throttle, it's going to get looser because there's no grip. So they have to modulate the throttle more. They have to be careful. And also, these brakes, they don't use the brakes a lot. You kind of have to pump them to warm them up. So now they're going to have to think about, maybe I need to now not only extend my braking zone, but extend how long I use the brakes for some of these corners. And again, that could be why we've seen Vravoski going a little bit wide. That's why we may have seen Revine going a little bit wide. On board now, Kyle Graham still having a little battle here with Gary Thomas as well. You can just start to see you have to be careful now when it comes to these hard braking zones, just because the tires are just not there anymore.
Carl Graham certainly taking a little bit more of an angle out there onto the oval bank. He's got to be careful about doing that, otherwise they'll start pinging him for being under the apron, and that could be a slowdown penalty if he's not too careful with the way he's going about it. So Carl Graham is there, and there is a penalty in for car number 30, which is Jeff Schmeier, who has picked that up. So he will have to go in and serve that penalty. It's a drive-through penalty, which won't hurt him too much by comparison. Vravoski now wanting that third place against Edward Shelley, who's fifth in the championship.
This is good for the championship. Also talking about pit stop, Tom Guest comes in to serve his first pit stop. So look at the numbers and look at the times we're talking about drivers coming into the pit, and you start to realize now that some of these cars are looking at 26 laps when it comes to pit stop for Vravoski. Again, trying to get it, and look how careful he has to be on the throttle coming out of turn 7. I just wonder, just for that moment, maybe too cautious. And this is another issue on a slow corner and you're following somebody. You want to get on throttle early, and you can't get on throttle in time because you're waiting for the car in front, and this is what Vravoski's having at the moment. So how do you look at this? In sports car racing, how does a driver set themselves up? Well, it's actually braking earlier. It's actually lifting and then braking. And number one, that's going to help Vravoski for fuel saving. Number two, that's going to give him more space to be able to get on that throttle earlier. And if he is having issues at 7, the best thing right now is to do a little bit of a lift, is to then go for it. And a mistake like that from Shelley, going a little bit too wide out of turn 1, just will help him, because that gap, he's already gained 3/10 just from that one gap, and now the pressure's on, and now he goes a little bit wide, but wider is good, able to open the corner up a little bit. So this helps him for the time being. But if I'm that man in that 787B Mustang, I'm looking at lifting a little bit before I get on the brakes right now if I'm getting too close to Shelley. Not happening, but one thing that is happening, Hafler-Darson is starting to struggle.
Yeah, you're seeing that struggle here from Michael Hafler-Darson. He is falling back into the clutches of these drivers, and he's dropped a full second on that lap then to Edward Shelley, who is really clawing this back. So it's 23s v 22s for Vian here in 11th place, with behind that Gary Thomas, and in front Wayne Hutchison. This is where you are starting to think about, where can I go and gain these places? Where can I start jumping up? Where can I position myself for this phase of the race? And so when you look around and see these drivers, you've only got currently 8 on the leading lap as it currently stands. And Steve Vian here in 11th place will be looking at Wayne Hutchison in 10th. We'll look at Gary Thomas behind and go, not quite where I want to be, because he's had a very busy race out there at the moment, has the 73.
Very busy is one way to describe it. And again, going a bit too wide through 7. tried to get that car turned in, couldn't get it turned in. The tires are starting to cry. And the 30 did appeal that penalty, by the way. It was denied. It's still a penalty there for him. He'll still have to serve that. Brian, nothing yet for that incident we saw earlier with the turn 7, but still going. But he doesn't look comfortable out there right now. I think all that hard driving early in the race has really shot these tires.
Yeah, if you're going to be so aggressive early on, it's not going to leave you much out there, and I am interested with Garen Batten taking an early pit stop out there. Nobody else has dared follow into the pits, but Vivian remains close, but it's still stayed by Wayne Hutchison at this point, and Edward Shelley now has caught back up to Michael Hafler-Darson now, and so that gap is going to be a next to nothing. They've got Joshua Hampton just in front that they're going to have to try and clear, but Hafler-Darson is so much braver over that final chicane. It gives him 3 car lengths, and he gives it up again with his lift and coast.
Yeah, and the lift and coast is working for him, and this is where you start to look. So we've seen a driver pit lap 25, a driver pit lap 26. Where is Hafler-Darson going to go compared to Shelley and Vravoski? And I reckon he's probably going to be +1, definitely, when we come to laps out there. But when do they pit? How comfortable are they right now? Because it feels like Hafler-Darson isn't the more comfortable out of these 3 drivers when it comes to this. Really, Vravoski's the most comfortable out there when it comes to the tyre wear and the pace. But we come here again, the corner of 5 million turns, it feels like. All 3 drivers took a different line there, almost went 3 wide, and the better line comes from Edward Shelley.
Well, Edward Shelley got a lovely push through the middle of the corner by Trevor Vravoski, and that gave him the emphasis to run on into the corner and say, that's mine, and Edward Shelley overcooks it. Michael Hafler-Darson overcooks it. Here goes Trevor Vravoski. He'll get one, he might get them both.
You know what? Vravoski lifted. He saw they were side by side, and he thought, I want nothing to do with this. And he decided he'd get both of them by just playing it safe. That's what you got to do right now. You're 1/3 of the way through, and Hafler-Darson more locking. I reckon those brakes are a little bit too hot after that moment there. He's going to have to calm it down. He's lost a lot of time, and now what was him currently battling and leading this 3-car pack, he's now 2 seconds behind them. Going to have to cool everything down right now.
Yeah, that's not ideal there for the likes of Michael Hafler-Darson. He knows how critical this race is going to be, that he looks around and sees that Vravoski is through, that Shelley is through, and that this is proving to be a very tough ordeal out there at the front. Vravoski, though, will still have Edward Shelley for company, but if you're out there and the only driver you're behind is someone of a different region, you know, Trevor Vravoski is doing everything he is supposed to in a race like this, which is manage all the manageable areas that you can and be ahead of the drivers you need to be ahead of. Doing a wonderful job.
Doing a wonderful job, and let's be pretty honest, this is Charlotte Roval. You kind of expect an American to lead and an American to be behind, but you wouldn't expect a British man to be there as well battling. But regardless, that is what Shelley's doing. Gary Thomas comes in for a pit stop. I also saw Ray Partridge, unfortunately, has taken a toe out there after what I believe must be a little bit of a bad moment out there. So he is gone as well. Rode the wall into turn 1, and that's not what you want to see. But Thomas up there as well, gets some right side tires. He gets some left side tires as well, and that's going to be crucial. Get some grip out there, because you don't want to be stuck behind these drivers who are still battling with some very old tires.
Yeah, those old tires are going to be giving a whole heap of importance now to the way this race will be run. The moment that a pit stop will come into play, Stephen Vivian is going to be one of them who is going to be desperate for that stop, and Edward Shelley not really able to find that drive. And look how wide Vravoski is now having to go. That's just the turning circle, just unable to carry the same amount of speed as before. We do have Ray Partridge down in the pits at this moment, and he's been in for a very long time by the looks of it, because he has gone wall riding at turn 1, and that is what has put him wrong place, wrong time, having to take the toe and potentially the fast repair as well. So that then doesn't do what the doctor ordered as far as that goes. We've also had Gary Thomas come in to make a stop. In comes Edward Shelley.
In comes Edward Shelley, and remember, he has to manage this speed because otherwise he gets the penalty. There's no pit limiters on these. Here's Ray Partridge doing his best Hail Melon impression, but that's not going to get you anything because he went hard into that barrier, and that second contact would have been the lack of steering and also trying to get out the way of everybody, because then that opens up and you get that rallycross layout there. So he tried his best to make sure he kept safe. And with Shelley, he's safe in the pit, but lap 32, we got to keep our eyes on what Ravoski and Hafler-Darson do, because 32, you times that by 3. Well, my maths is very good, Jake. That means he has to do a splash and dash.
It would do, and look at where he's actually come out with here, Craig, because this is critical for Edward Shelley. He's got Garen Batten right behind him.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Garen has been driving, what, 5, 6, 7 laps on these tyres. They're up to temperature, and he's been able to use those fresh tyres to actually gain this time on Edward Shelley. Probably won't work in the long run, because he'll have to do 5 laps, 5 pit stops. So very interested in, wow, Ravoski, managed to go around the outside of Wayne Hutchinson at turn 1.
Well, Wayne didn't get any drive off the exit. The reason why, he was trying to serve a slowdown. By the time he got it served, it was Stephen Vervaen around the outside. So the dog bear machine of Wayne Hutchinson loses out, and the orange and black 73 gets the pass done. Stephen Vervaen now looking for progress out there on circuit as it currently goes. That a move that puts him up into the top 10 as we are sniffing about on strategies here, as there have been some great moves up through this field. Robert Northway has been the interesting one for me, 18th to 5th, and so actually he becomes a very interesting point being a Kiwi, because it gives us a good excuse to talk about Shane van Gisbergen. Is he rewriting the rules of what a NASCAR driver should be?
That's a tough question to ask, because the question then goes down to what is a NASCAR driver, and I just start to feel that you've got to accept that NASCAR is an international field. And the question also then goes is, everyone talks about how good Kyle Larson is, and he is. I'm not going to put that to debate, but where do you rank Shane van Gisbergen in terms of all drivers? Because he dominated Australia, and then he decided to come over. And not only that, let's just look at the rest of the drivers from Australia, because then you get a Shane McLaughlin who decides to go into IndyCar, and he's been doing his thing. Like, these two drivers have been doing their thing. And I tell you what we missed was Shelley lost the position because on cold tires, weaving and losing it on throttle out of the bus stop last lap, meaning that he was unable to do anything. But these guys are British and Australian, and I do feel that one of them has to play the role of Van Gisbergen, and one of them has to play the role of who's a British IndyCar driver. Let's just say Jenson Button.
Well, someone has to play a role where they are a little bit further back out there, but Garen Batten gets himself through on Edward Shelley, and that a critical move which puts him net third with that pass, and needed to make it happen. Managed to do so a handful of laps ago, and in fact it was a mistake at the chicane on lap 33 which allowed Garen Batten the chance to run by. By the way, 36 laps in, 32 seconds the lead here for Dallas Pataska. It's Dallas's world and we're just living in it.
Well, they say everything is bigger in Texas, and I think Dallas has managed to try and get a big enough lead as he can. I'm pretty sure if this was real world NASCAR, we'd be having the competition caution right now, but they did try to stop that a couple of years ago by having competition caution not go to yellows at the end of the stage, so they just kept on racing. But apparently the drivers, the fans didn't like that, which I can't understand why, because you got this great battling, and I want to see Dallas just lap everybody, and I feel with the pace he's going, it may happen. But also, look at these pit stops. Robert Northway now in the pits, and the top 4 still haven't pitted, and we're talking about 10 laps later than the first 2 pitters.
Well, you need to go 36 to 37 laps a stint to make it work on a 2-stop strategy. You're on a 3 if you're doing anything shorter than that. And Daniel Thomas here in a big scrap gets his move done on Michael Hafler-Darson. There the move is made. Hafler-Darson is really dropping back now and finding out just how tough this race is being, because every time he's going through these corners, he's finding mistakes. He is better on pace as he makes the move back through the banking of NASCAR 1 and 2 into 10, 11 and 12. But Daniel Thomas will realise this, that Michael Hafler-Darson's missing quite a few braking zones and gives the notice, I'm pitting in. In is your leader, Dallas Pataska. Vavrovsky stays out.
Now, I wonder, because we saw Hafler-Darson doing a lot of fuel saving as the leader now comes out. Daniel Thomas just missed the chicane, by the way, and I wonder if taking that different line to allow Hafler-Darson to pit caused that. But Hafler-Darson was fuel saving. We saw he was doing a lot of fuel saving, and he's in the pits now at the same time as Dallas Pataska. And Trevor Vavrovsky, who hasn't been aggressively lifting and coasting, is somehow now in P2 and one of the last pit stops. In fact, you look at some of the last pit stops, Hakan Schut has not pitted. Daniel Thomas has not pitted. David Baker's just pitted. Joshua Hampton still to pit as well. Very interesting. I wonder if we may see Thomas at the end of this race make this, because look where he is at the moment as Kyle Graham comes out.
Yeah, this could be an all-important race for Daniel Thomas as David H. Baker now hits the lane and gets that service sorted. Dallas Pataska, a whole pit stop clear of Trevor Vavrovsky, who gets a massive power surge going through the exit of turn 11, heading towards 12. So Vavrovsky now, I think he's the one interesting driver in this party. He will hit his marks and go to the lane just 65 or 64 kilometers an hour. It is down the straight as you look to try and make that happen. In comes Daniel Thomas, so he's very much same window as Trevor Vavrovsky. If you've done the math properly, it's a 2-stop day today, maybe a 3 if you haven't quite got the numbers underneath you.
And now let's just look at this for a moment, because then you ask yourself, why is Garen Batten taking a pit stop so early? Well, he's looking to try and get the best out of these tires. It's not going to be good for him, but at the same time, if he's going this distant, he may also be able to just save some fuel and not put a whole tank in. So that could be a little secret strategy from Garen Batten. For these guys, they are just on that strategy. Out he goes. Edward Shelley will hold on, and now it's crucial. Shelley didn't have a good outlap with those cold tires. What can Vavrovsky do? Because right now he's got a man he didn't expect to see right behind him in Garen Batten. Daniel Thomas will come out, and Daniel Thomas, he is now trying to catch up to Michael Hafler-Darson. Some of these cars have really struggled with the worn tires, and you get to see that the fresher tired cars, like Garen Batten, might have played a little bit of an advantage here.
Well, Garen Batten here has dropped. Oh no, there he goes! On cue, Garen Batten with a half slide on the power on the exit. We were talking about him using those tyres a little bit more aggressively than others, coming in as the first to make a stop, and that's the give and take. The take being, I don't have the grip anymore because I was uber aggressive on them.
I was uber aggressive. I'm probably running a lighter car with less fuel, and that's a little bit of a problem. If he pitted lap 25, we're on lap 38. He'll be coming in about 12 laps, but if he was Nico Rosberg, he'd be saying, I've flat spotted my tires right now, I need to come in, but he's holding on at the moment. But that was big. He was really putting the pressure on Trevor Vavrovsky there, unable to do it, and wide goes Kyle Graham right beside him. Gonna have to wait for Kyle to just take a slowdown, but that is big time. He's lost 4 seconds and more from that slide just there, and you've got to feel maybe he's just got to be patient.
Patience is, of course, a virtue when it comes to racing like this, and Vavrovsky here in 3rd place will now be eyeing up Edward Shelley in 2nd, using that offset that we see on the tyres to try and launch him back up through the order. But Edward Shelley can just keep himself calm and get himself into position, just run his laps the way that he knows that he can manage at this stage. As for now, David H. Baker goes a lap down, which will now mean we are down to just 8 on the leading lap as things currently stand. Vavrovsky happy in that 3rd place, but he will be looking behind him, knowing he's got a pretty sizable gap over Garen Batten there in 4th, and Michael Hafler-Darson, the biggest loser from the first half of the race, or first 40 laps, as he now finds himself down in 5th place with a lot of work to do to even keep it. A big wiggle in front of Edward Shelley there from one of his Fusion teammates, that being Gary Thomas.
And also just big moment just to talk about Stephen Ravayan has taken a tow with a lot of damage on the rear of that car. In fact, oh my word, he's just literally just gone flipping. He kind of went a bit too hard going into the pits.
Well, I think he's just caught the apron. I don't think it's even that. He's caught the apron and he has absolutely slammed into the pit attenuator and gone upside down. No other way of describing it. If you drop yourself ever so slightly down in that corner, you're going to be in trouble. And Stephen Vavayan becomes the first retiree of the race because he's already used his repair. We'll take a look here. So he works himself then through 3 into 4, and he has just caught the attenuator as he's gone in because he has caught the apron down on the inside.
I'm really curious. Great slow-mo. I'm really curious how hard he hit that when we look at the speed. He was 180 kilometers an hour hitting that. Now, in the real world, they would be full of water to protect you from the concrete pot, the concrete wall. That is still going to be a heavy hit in the real world. 180 kilometers an hour sideways. The water would not slow you down in time, and even though they're solid on the sim, that is still in the real world going to be a very painful accident. I would also bring a red flag out, I would feel.
Yeah, because you've got to make sure that the barrier and the integrity of the barrier would be there, so that would be constitution for a stoppage out there, as Michael Hafler-Darson now on the back of Garen Batten wants his pass to move up into 4th position. Batten with no drive coming through turn 4. A lift off then for Hafler-Darson, who now has to attack through 5 over the crest here at 6 and over towards turn 7, where he's got himself an angle and he's trying to pivot for that inside, lunges down for it. Garen gives him all the room in the world, and the pass then gets made. So a very nice move that's done. And here's the issue for Garen Batten. If he can't get this clearance done, they've got Daniel Thomas only a couple seconds behind. So Hafler-Darson now looking to try and get that clearance. They're going to scrap on the brakes here to 10, 11, 12. And there goes the pass from Hafler-Darson. Gets the move done comfortably on Garen.
I think the key thing there as well is that Garen's got tyres that are almost 20 laps old. Michael got tyres that are 5 laps old, and I think a lot of that just came to the tyre wear, just able to get that grip to go in that inside line and just push on. And yes, there'll be a lot of rubber down there, but it's not a lot of rubber to really look at because drivers have been taking so many different lines there. It's a corner of 1,001 lines out there today, and I think Hafler-Darson managed to armbar his way out there.
Well, if you can get a sort of corner like that sorted out, I think the rest of this race will feel quite easy by comparison. It's a very tough corner, especially in this machinery. Vavrovsky in 3rd keeps himself with Edward Shelley at 35 seconds off of your race lead as it currently stands. So there is the push that's going on. Also live at exactly the same time with us here on the Global Sim Racing channel, you have got also as well on iRacing your Lotus 79 action, which is going on at this moment in time. You have got the likes of the two Joes, Joe Peak and Joey Atterbury, who are together going through that coverage. But at least for the time being here with us and the Major Series, it is all about the case of 2nd and 3rd, Edward Shelley and Trevor Vavrovsky, and then that gap right now, which by comparison is a full infield section.
Well, I just didn't think about that for a moment. It is a full infield section, but crucially, have you noticed it's no longer a full pit stop advantage, as the gap is now 36 seconds, and from cone to cone, it's 40 to 41 seconds out there. So Edward is starting to tighten the screw. Key thing is, though, Dallas pitted lap 36. He should be able to go all the way. Edward pitted lap 32, and 32 times 3, you can do the maths. He's going to have to do a splash and dash. So going to need to try and find a way to really go long with these fuel stops if he wants to try and just catch Dallas sleeping. I can't see it. However, the interesting thing right now is we're watching Daniel Thomas battle Garen Batten. That gap between Ravoski and Shelley starting to tighten up. The front of this field, really interesting. So many different strategies going on.
Well, here's the even more interesting thing, and it will be at the end of the race. It's what do you do tyre-wise if you are an Edward Shelley? Because if you're only pitting with about 10 laps to go at the end of the race, there's no point putting it up on 2 tyres or even 4 tyres. I think you just go in, get your splash of fuel, save the time on the tyres, and go out for your last 10 laps.
I mean, that's the easiest thing. And I know that means you're going to have to deal with the worn tyres. But if you're able to just look after them a little bit, because track temp has gone up to 30 Celsius. We talked about how the air temp was only going to go up 1 Celsius today. It is interesting just to see maybe the first full run, because that's what they've done. It's the first full run out there. Now they've got the ability to just, you know, have a little bit of a feel. And now they understand, because some of these drivers probably wouldn't have done full run practices. They would have just got themselves comfortable with the track, knowing where the corners go, knowing what happened to just snatch on. And also, we've got to talk about it, it's a rubbered in line now, so the grip will also start to go. And in fact, the line is really noticeable now, as you can see it. It wasn't like that when we started the race. So maybe he can use this tire advantage to himself. Daniel Thomas almost need to use Garen Batten's bumper to an advantage there.
Yeah, the line will move on the oval banking, but I doubt it's going to make much difference here down on the run that they've got. It's very much a one-groove style circuit that we tend to see when Roval running is put into play. But what's also key is looking at the way Daniel Thomas tries to attack this race at the moment, because I look around and say he's not actually done anything too untoward. He's just been flying about, trying to do his business, trying to get himself through these places one at a time. And he looks at Garen Batten and go, yeah, I was close, but Garen is going to go straight on at that final chicane, and that's going to open up the door now for Daniel Thomas to close in. So Garen Batten now finding troubles in play as he now deals with tyres that are circumspect at best.
Yeah, and I do wonder if that's the main issue here, as he's trying to battle hard like these two are battling hard. Ravoski is on the back of Edward Shelley once again. And now you've got to start to wonder, look at that line, very wide there from Shelley, but Ravoski can't get on the throttle, and I wondered if he could, because he was able to earlier. Shoot is going to let them through high above and just let them go on by. But now comes the question, in fact, he's not going to get there in time, finally does at the last moment. This is going to hold up Ravoski, and I do wonder, again, Shelley pitted 5 laps earlier. The tyres shouldn't have worn out this quickly, but it's starting to feel a little bit like those tyres are wearing out for Edward Shelley.
And that could be just a setup thing that we're seeing with the Fusion drivers out there, because they do have to craft a car that works for everybody out there. And he's overcooked the corner, and Vavrovsky with nowhere to go gets held up, and that is a big sigh of relief for Edward Shelley through the corner. It could have been so much more out there than what it was. The gap over the line now up to 39.3 seconds in this race, but I turn around, I see what you look at then with Trevor Vavrovsky, with Edward Shelley, and I would say without any worries at all, Edward Shelley, it's got to be a Fusion thing that they've built a car that does not like the tyres in the mid part of the stint, because look at the way he's bouncing about there through turn 6, heading over into 7.
And this is where road racing, when it comes to the stock cars, another mistake, and the same thing again, but the inside will be for Ravoski. This is the one thing with when it comes to road racing with oval cars. Some drivers, when you come to an oval, you're trying to set it up for a short run or a long run. But to idea for a middle of the run here for a road course, this is something a little bit alien for these cars. You have to almost set them one for all style. I'm not talking about the remote control that we would have in the 90s. I'm talking about this car really trying to just understand that whatever the car does, you have to keep doing it for 36, 37 laps. Shelley couldn't do it. Garen definitely couldn't do it for Fusion. What are the Fusion drivers thinking? They must have a plan at some point, but it doesn't feel like it's going to plan.
Well, the only thing I can think of in terms of what the plan would be is to build a car that can go, I would say, to fully commit to a 3-star. Oh, Edward's gone straight on. Bang! Hard into the barriers, and that's the worry, that the car gets tight as it goes into certain corners. It's looked tight for the last couple laps, and Edward Shelley careens into the barriers down at the Bank of America, and he knows which bank he can go to in order to try and get his repair bill sorted.
Well, unfortunately, the front of the car's got a massive F on it, and I think that kind of explains what the feelings right now, because that front left of the car does not look very happy, and I do wonder what steering damage that may have caused. Steering damage would be very hard to work with right now, so we'll keep an eye on that. He may take the fast repair during the stop. Daniel Thomas, he's now trying to hunt another Fusion driver in Garen Batten, and now Garen's been on these tyres for 22 laps, and you've now got to start feeling that don't think the Aussie's got a lot left in those tyres if he can only do 25 before. So look in the next few laps if Garen's sticking to this plan for him to do a pit stop.
Carl Graham here in 12th position on the road is eyeing up P11. Wayne Hutchison just in front. Behind, trying to lap them, is Robert Northway here in 7th place. So this becomes a difficult race between them at this moment as they jam on the brakes into the chicane. Northway's going to want to try and get through, and it's not as if you can flash the lights to get by because they're painted on, their stickers.
Yeah, and that's another thing I think may have also hurt some of the drivers, because you're trying to brake, and then you're trying to brake and you don't know the other guy's braking, and I think that may have caused some of those issues earlier in the race that we saw. So Kyle's going to have to just hope that he understands what Wayne's doing. This is where the stock car almost turns into Formula Racing, Jake, which you're very well known on, because with Formula Racing, there is no brake lights. And this is basically what the stock car did. It's almost like a really slow stock car wide for Kyle. He's not going to try and make this move. That's a very tight move, and this is going to come to trouble. He does hold on. Wayne was not expecting that, but that position belongs to Kyle.
Well, Wayne Hutchison left the open door and tried to drive it back off the exit. By the time he got there, though, and was straightening out the line, there was on the inside Carl Graham, and that's why the pass is done. And Carl Graham's recovery now puts him up to P11. He has a massive slide, though, off the exit. He will have no speed onto the banking through 3 and 4. The high line being taken by Wayne, who in his world at the moment will start losing out that position, and Carl Graham has held on that one quite nicely to move on up now into P11.
Now, do you know how I can tell, Jake, that these drivers are starting to struggle with the tyres? It's not that we're seeing them crash. I don't need to see them have mistakes. Half of the field did not set a valid lap last lap, which that means they were serving a slowdown when they crossed the line, which means the drivers have been overshooting the final chicane, which shows that these tyres and the brakes are starting to go. And I'm not talking about the brake shattering and having to do the rest of the race cutting the corners by just lifting and coasting. They're going to have to now navigate this, and track temp goes up again, 31 Celsius, 87 Fahrenheit for our friends over the pond who actually race on this track where they live. And a spin as well from Kyle Graham while we're looking at Daniel Thomas. It just goes to show the drivers are definitely not enjoying the tyres right now. Who's the first car to blink and go into the pit? Again, eyes would be on Garen Batten.
Well, you'd be looking around lap 54 would be your halfway stage, lap 54 and a half. And so the philosophy is, if you can't make it to 36, 37 laps, you're looking around at what 109 divided by 4 is. And so you'd be looking around 27 laps per stint, 28 laps a stint, to try and make sure that, yeah, you're losing that time, but you're adding an extra stop in and being more aggressive with the tyres as you go. Daniel Thomas still looking to try and hunt on down. He's representing Team Chevy here today, and you do get that when it comes to American racing out there, that you sometimes get people who are going out there who watch this and go, well, I'm not supporting a team, I'm not a Penske fan, I'm not, say, a big fan of the Wood Brothers Racing, but I am a fan of Chevy, I am a fan of Ford, I am a fan of Toyota if those exist.
Yeah, and I think also you gotta look. I think there's another one coming, but the name has left me. I think Ram's coming back, or no, that's Dodge. Sorry, Dodge are coming back. The Dodge Ram's a truck, so that's already there. They're coming back into the fray, and this is what you get. And on iRacing, for some of the people that aren't American, it's not a case of which car they pick because of their brand. On iRacing as well, it's also which car they pick because it looks the best. It's as simple as, I've had these debates with people that they will pick a Toyota for an Xfinity car because it looks great and the cockpit looks nice. And I've seen drivers like myself, I am a Ford fan, of course, who would pick a Ford because it does look mean, it looks aggressive, and it really does say a Mustang to you, even though it's just a fiberglass body put on top of the same chassis. Like this man, for a Chevy, some drivers really like the Chevys, but one reason that he's driving a Chevy, I'm pretty sure what team he supports, because this gives me Kyle Larson vibes from this car livery.
Yes, it's very much the satellite racing colours there, the blue, the red and the white, but it very much looks like a Hendrick Motorsport livery in the way that they've tried to build it together, which is very, very classy in the way that they've managed to put that together. But Dallas Pataska here has been walking clear at the line. It was 42.3 seconds, the margin, at an hour and 10 minutes. I reckon we're going to be on here for about an hour and a half, 2 hours and a half in terms of overall time, the way he's been going about it. The Kiwi, Robert Northway, in 7th position. He's a little bit lost on his own at the moment, with the gap, of course, to Daniel Thomas at about 10 seconds, and he's managed to pull 10 seconds over Tom Guess. I was not expecting Edward Shelley in this early, but I think he has to.
Yeah, I was seeing a pit light on my timing tower, and I thought, oh, it's Garen coming in now. And then I saw it was the other Fusion driver, and I do wonder if this is because of that damage he's going to sit in. Pop goes the Weasel, and the bodywork is out. That's his fast repair done. But Daniel Thomas will go across and make the overtake. So that means Edward Shelley, he will have to do a splash and dash, definitely. So that now opens this opportunity for the likes of Hafler Darson, for Vravoski. They know that Shelley is a little bit struggling out there. Gets a really quick stop, though. But Daniel Thomas continues to fight on here with Garen Batten. And this is the car that I feel, Garen Batten, should be the car that we should be seeing making this pit stop shortly. Remember, he pitted lap 25. It's lap 52. He's over that margin that he did before. And I wonder if this is the Fusion thing, Jake. We talked about it. One of them's gone long, one of them's gone short. One's gone short, maybe he'll go long.
Well, I look at that from Edward Shelley. I think that is a definite pivot to a 3-stop strategy first and foremost. But because he had to take a short stop, because it was effectively only half a stint he's done, I'd say that's not bad for him. I think he can go a little bit longer than what some of the others now can do, and he'll be looking around with about 25 laps to go, you know what, we can go aggressive on this final stint and really start chasing back down those who are on a 2-stop. So I don't think it puts him out of the realms of possibility. I just think it leaves him a lot of room to chase, and we've been keeping Daniel Thomas in our mind's eye at the moment because he is very staunchly stuck to the back of Garen Batten out there at the moment, and Garen proving that the Oceania region does produce some very good oval runners. There's a lot of running that's gone through, even in the sim racing world. The amount of times I have seen the ANSCAR series do wonderfully out there on iRacing. I love what the Australians can do when it comes to oval running, and they did have for a time their own dedicated oval circuit at Calder Park, the Thunderdome. Oh, what a save!
that was synchronized. You could have told me that they were going for the Olympics there for synchronized diving, and they would have both gone there. They were absolutely both lit up the tires at the same time. They were trying to get onto the line, but Daniel getting past Garen Batten right away. and that gets gone. And you talk about that Oceania thing, and it makes you wonder. You look at why has Gisberg and why has SVG done well, and you look at it, and I always thought he would do well because, you know, V8 supercars are basically just NASCARs, but with rear wings and a lot of power. It's almost similar type of driving style when it comes to a road circuit, and that idea that a NASCAR stock car is basically a V8 supercar without a wing and on an oval. It does make sense that you can transfer those skills from those V8s to these V8s and these V12s and whatever the Americans like to run. And it just shows that, yeah, this is why some of these New Zealanders and Australians are doing really well, because it kind of does just transfer over. It's probably the only two series that are really intertwined to one another, just in terms of feel and driving style.
I will say as well that the Australians have a massive, thriving dirt oval scene out there as well. So they also have the ability to run a lot of oval running that maybe the rest of the world doesn't necessarily get to see. So the big difference you now start to find out there. Garen Batten then running about in fifth, and it might be fifth and the last car on the leading lap, because Dallas Pataska is only about 5 seconds away now from lapping Robert Northway here in P6.
Yeah, Penny Le Mans was yesterday, so you're not looking to overtake everybody and have a track where you're just constantly overtaking people, but that's what Dallas is doing right now. Garen continues to push on. Did see Tom Guest make his pit stop as well, so another early pit stop there. He's pitted at the halfway stage, but I feel like he could have gone that extra mile or extra 20 miles to take an extra 20 laps per se, unable to do so out there. So now you look at these drivers, and Shelley pitted lap 51. He's going to have to splash and dash at the end, but he's on a 4-stopper. Tom Guest, he's on a 4-stopper. Now you start to see which drivers are struggling out there and which drivers are committing to this 3-stopper, because the 3-stopper does look the quickest today if you're trying to battle for that final podium spot.
Well, for the moment, Carl Graham in 11th has himself a very awkward position. That's Dallas Pataska trying to go through, and then also Edward Shelley, who's converted onto that 3-stop strategy, and he will take advantage at this stage of the race, but it's those around that you now start thinking about and looking to, going, do I have enough of what it takes to make it as far in the race as I want to? I have to give some credit here because, you know, for the issues that we had at the early part, as Carl Graham has another big wiggle, or sees the wiggle of Edward Shelley in front, this has been quite a clean race by comparison, though. Everyone's found rhythm and has had time to work out what this car is going to do and how it's going to do. We haven't lost 3, 4, 5, 6 different drivers by running themselves into issues.
No, the only one retirement we've had really was Ryan just losing out on his valve repairs, making a self-made mistake, and that's what it's been most of the time here today. In fact, the majority of the time, the overall majority of the time, has been drivers making self-mistakes. They've not come in contact with one another. That 1% just is just a couple incidents out there, but that's it. The drivers have been safe. They've been battling hard, and when you've seen drivers battle hard out there, that they've made the mistake just by the pressure cooking them, and it's nothing to do with a driver forcing them to spin. So real good shout out there for the drivers to just really keep it clean and really keep it calm. And I think a lot of it is just because they know what is at stake here. And that's an interesting one, because that was Daniel Thomas saying, I don't want to take the bus stop. He's going to have to serve a slowdown. That's going to bring Garen Batten back into the fray. And the last thing he wants to do, that Welshman, is to allow the Aussie to get right back in.
No, it'll be a case of batten down the hatches at this point for Daniel Thomas. He will know that Garen Batten is there and will be doing everything in his power to try and hunt through. And I am keeping eyes on certain gaps then that are currently being put around. Michael Hafler-Darson down 10 seconds on Trevor Vavrovsky as it stands, and Daniel Thomas here is really having to work through these corners hard now. Garen Batten has settled down into rhythm and has gone, you know what, it's a long stint now that we are settling into. It is expected that Garen will pit in first. Over the crest goes Daniel Thomas, and that's the chasing gap that you've got behind. It's gonna be a lot of work to try and get this sorted, but you do have the ability to use that oval banking through turn 7 to get you on and charging forward. Tom Guest, after his stop, now behind David H. Baker at the moment and ahead quite comfortably of Gary Thomas.
I've got to give a shout out to the track designers here, because this is the first few months of the first month of this layout being used on iRacing. This is going to be the second Charlotte Roval with this layout. That turn 7 has really created a lot of jeopardy and a lot of intrigue, because before you would take turn 5, you'd go up the hill, you'd keep turning left, come down into a straight line that basically just curved and allow you to take turn 7 quite wide and almost a very long apexing corner, sweeping corner. Now you've got this real nice hard hairpin, which as we said, so many different lines, so many different way applications and applications of throttle as well, because here you go, just look at it. Obviously Sebastian Jackson coming into the pits, he's taking his pit stop, but you look at it, the drivers are struggling with all sorts of tire wear, trying to find the line. So that turn 7 really, and we've seen it today, has really made this track change the complexity and change the idea of how you tackle this track now. And it's just really nice to see.
It does add a little bit more to it, because what you used to have with that run through turn 5 into a very early 6 and then the roller coaster over the top of 6 into 7 and 8, you lose an overtaking opportunity coming up onto the banking. And so what have you done with this circuit by going and taking that wider turn 6? Well, you've taken some of the more unpredictable style of line out, and you've added an overtaking zone, which I think isn't a bad thing when suddenly now you've got 3 or 4 different places now you can go and make a pass, rather than the 2 or 3 that you had, as Carl Graham gets very close again underneath in the 5-4-2, and Gary Thomas, who is there in 10th place, finds out. Edward Shelley now on the back of Robert Northway, this to try and get the pass up into P6.
Yeah, and he is struggling with that at the moment, because where do you look for the overtake? And again, that's what you say. You look at that turn 7, not only has turn 7 turned into a place where you can make an overtake, turn 7 also now turns into a place where it sets up an overtake going into the bus stop at turn 10. So it just allows the drivers to do a lot more. And are you listening, F1? This is how you make a track more appealing for overtaking. You make it a little bit more wider, and you actually make a corner that allows people to make mistakes. Just look at this right now. Northway's going to have to be a little bit defensive. He's on worn tires. He's going to have to defend here to Shelley. Shelley, in theory, will get the better launch with these 8-lap-old tires compared to the 20-odd lap tires for Northway, but he can't do it because the corner has been bogged down by Northway. And that is the game here of chess, because now Northway is the better driver on the defense and wins that battle just for that moment into turn 7.
Yeah, and so being able to hold the battle at 7, he now controls the action as he goes through 10, 11 and 12, works back up on through NASCAR 3 and 4, heading over towards 16 and 17 to end the lap outright. Through 15, a small flick, he has a massive wiggle off the middle and jumps through as in comes Garen Batten to make his second stop of the race with 49 laps to go here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. That will constitute one more having to be done, but it's all scrapping now into the Bank of America turn number 3, and Edward Shelley just encroaches again on the rear, looking for a way to get drive off the exit. Northway doesn't have much of anything and lifts off of it, lets him have it. An easy pass at 5.
Yeah, you knew it when you saw into 3 there that Northway didn't have the grip, didn't have the ability to get on the throttle. Edward did, and he just decided that Northway, it's not worth the hassle. Take it, I will follow you, and I will keep. I say follow, he almost just decided to collect the wall there for a moment, but he's able to just keep this going. And now Shelley moves up into that 5th position. some 14 seconds behind Daniel Thomas, but it's still there. But he has taken that pit stop, and you look at it, he can go one more pit stop before the end of the race. Does he want to? But that Garrett Batten one, as we keep looking, interesting though, Jake. This allows him to do a shorter pit stop next time by, which means that he may be able to do a little bit more of an aggressive run at the end of the race.
Well, it depends on how aggressive he wants to be and whether he wants to half-fill the car and have 2 aggressive half-fills rather than a full fill and a splash and dash. It's about what is going to be best for him over the course of this run. So I would start thinking about where do I want the strategy of my fuel game to be. 50 seconds now, the margin at the front for Dallas Pataska, who now sees there Jeff Schmeier put a 3rd lap down, and he is really running in his own pace at this stage. And I think this is what Dallas does. He knows he wanted points. He's 13th in the Americas region, and he has gone and said, bully, as we just have a spin, and that is Jeff Schmeier, who is dramatically spun around then and has to wait for Robert Northway and co before getting back up to speed again.
Yeah, and he just took that corner. I think he tried to follow in the line that Dallas was taking and thought he could just learn a line, which I don't blame him. Learn from one of the better drivers out there, or the best driver out there today, to try and get that line, but was unable to do anything with it. And now we come to the rest of the field, the rest of these guys battling for the podium, and Bravoski's got 9 seconds over Hafnardarsson. Hafnardsson's got 10 seconds over Thomas. They are going to have to pit at some point. Remember, they pitted 37 and 36 and 37 respectively. So you're looking about lap 74 for these cars to come in, and those tires will be crying now as another spin for Schmeier in the background, but Bravoski continues on. They're going to be crying for some life right now, and I do wonder how you're going to be able to get that life, because again, track temp's gone down to 28 Celsius, Jake, but that doesn't mean the track is still colder. The tires are still going to be too warm.
Yeah, you are going to be dealing with a circuit that is going to get a little bit quicker out there, but it's also going to be a little bit more on a knife edge, as Michael Hafnardarsson has closed about a second over the last, I would say, 5 to 10 laps or so. It's a 22.7 last time for Bravoski. Hafnardarsson's lap did not count last lap, but the last lap that did count for him was a 23 flat, so this might be a better tell of what Hafnardarsson has done. This one also not counting for Michael Hafnardarsson, a 22.5 for Trevor Bravoski. Then we'll say that is good enough at the moment. So there is still elements of this race that do need to be decided, and so at 47 laps to go, I think we just hit that little lull where I think we're waiting for strategy to open itself out and say, right, this is what the end of this race is going to look like for us and what we're capable of doing. Daniel Thomas, I think, has driven himself a very good race today.
Daniel Thomas has put himself in, let's be brutally honest, in position to try and get a podium. 10 seconds is nothing when you look at a race at this distance, and it does feel like if he has a chance, this could be his chance, because anything can happen. You have to go in for a quick fast repair. You probably would also go in for a full pit stop, so you'd be looking at time there, and that would allow you to get this advantage. There's no drive-through for incident limits, or you don't set the slowdown, so real good battling. Like you say, this really just falls into that endurance racing now. You don't know where everyone sits until the final pit stop. Well, here, I think we're going to know before the final pit stop what everyone's doing, but we're at that stage where we're in that final pit stop window, so if you pit now, you're going to be using a lot more tyre for a lot longer. And a big one in front of Daniel, and that's Sebastian Jackson. And, well, he had a good start to the race, and it went bad to worse for him.
Well, for Seb, that is a tough one, because the car has just decided to let go on him, can't get it to transfer the other way, and as such, he now gets himself another lap down, now his 4th lap down to Dallas Pataska with that slide. So a very dramatic hit for number 87, and the front is, there you can see the bonnet trying to pop off of the top of his machinery out there. That's Chevrolet looking second hand.
Yeah, for sale, one used Chevrolet, driven politely would probably be the Craigslist description of that, but I don't think that's driving very nicely.
It's your list, isn't it?
Pardon?
It's your list, isn't it?
I don't know. It's not mint condition. I would say that. Would you say it's mint condition?
Lightly used.
There we go. Lightly used. I think that's the best way to describe it. This car is a car that is definitely lightly used because I believe this is Ray Partridge's second car he's had out there today, and he's probably put the first one in the scrap heap in the background to get some money for the metal out there, because Ray, unfortunately, not having the best of days out there, but still going. And even if you still go, that's still points in the championship. You may not be battling for the championship, but there's some drivers that you want to have some bragging rights for.
Well, the bragging rights of, can I get myself forward? Can I do what I need to? He knows he can't get the wooden spoon. That belongs to Stephen Vervieren, with himself out of the race, hitting the attenuator earlier on in this one, about 27 laps ago at this point. But it is a tough old race, this one, because you are dealing with the fatigue of trying to wrestle this car around, and it's not a case of an easy car to wrestle around here, Craig, because when you're looking around and seeing what do you have to do, you got to remember this is a car that will have a very, very heavy steering wheel.
Yeah, they have heavy steering wheels, but frankly, they've got power steering. And if you've ever seen the photo of Clint Boyer after he did his last season here, he needed to win at Charlotte to get into the playoffs, and he had his power steering failed, and he had to do 3/4 of the Charlotte Roval race with no power steering. He got out the car. There's a fantastic photo of him absolutely dead, just absolutely exhausted. It is artwork, and it is so tough. Now these drivers don't have to deal with that. They've just got literally force feedback to work with. So they've not got that problem. But one thing that is interesting, this is a stock car, which is a round wheel that you really want to use. You don't want to put a Formula wheel on your sim rig to try and drive this. So you're using a full wheel for 2.5 hours. That can actually be a little bit of an issue, because you're not death gripping it like you would a Formula wheel, but you're having that totally there, and it will just throw you off. One moment, one misthought there, one lapse of concentration, and you're not paying attention to what's the up part of the steering wheel, and you may just grab it wrong, or you're not used to it, because it also doesn't transfer the same sort of forces that you would on a Formula wheel.
Just looking at the last 3 laps from Michael Hafler-Darson, 23-1, 23-1, 23-1. By comparison here to those around him, like that will be in 4th position Daniel Thomas, 22-6, 22-2, 22-2. He is being hunted at this moment for that 3rd place. Daniel Thomas, the Welshman, trying to get himself some moves right now. Hafler-Darson is wanted at this moment. The chase on, then going through and seeing what it will be this time. 22-5 plays a good response from Hafler-Darson of a 22-1.
And he needs that, and he probably realizes that he has to now start hitting those times, but this is where the tires are starting to give up, and this is where they have to now back off the corners, ease on the throttle a little bit. It's almost like driving in the 40C conditions on a road course, where you have to just be smooth, and smooth is fast, and that's what you need right now. And a lot of coasting as well, as Wayne Hutchinson just trying to keep on going, as he's still trying to catch up to Gary Thomas 6 seconds up the road. Just a couple cars around him, though, that he had to get past. Well, one he won't get past. It's the David Baker
Gary
up ahead, and Gary's had a little bit of a moment up there, but he's come into the pits, and I think, again, that's early, but again, Fusion, they know one more pit stop there, and Gary will be fine to the end of the race.
Well, I tell you what, I don't think Gary Thomas was very comfortable at all getting onto pit lane. That was a zero risk pit lane entry as he jumps on in. I don't think there was much you could say about that, except I am going to not speed, and by doing so I will give as much time up as I can to make sure I won't.
That almost looked like this was Charlotte Oval. That almost looked like a Charlotte Oval pit stop there. Coming off onto the apron as soon as you can, halfway between 3 and 4 and then slowing down. That was a very cautious pit lane entry there, because I do wonder if he's had issues out there with braking because of the tire wear, and maybe that could be it. And again, another driver who hasn't pitted yet. About 4 or 5 drivers yet to pit. In fact, 6, 7, 8 is the number, I think, yet. So still a lot of drivers still out there on these really old tires. It really, now you probably will see more drivers just making those mistakes. Of Ravoski, again, look how slow he has to navigate that bus stop just because of those tires.
Needs that drive, needs to try and navigate through. And we've been talking about the championship and how many points that you can pick up. It's not been dominant in terms of wins this season from Trevor Ravoski. He's got 3 wins to his name. He's got 5 top 5 finishes. But the critical fact is that when he's not been scoring, he has been scoring well still. So even though he's had 4 races where he's been outside of the top 5, he's still been drilling in those points. And compare it to everybody, he's 9 points clear of Nathan Dowd, for example, who is in control of the championship in the Americas region, and a full further few points clear of Ewan Baker in control of international. So he's done very well to pick up those points, and he has done so with his 9 starts so far this season, not by the fact that he's got the most wins or the most top 5s, but by the measure and metric of his bad results are still really good.
And that's important. Consistency is key out there, and sometimes drivers, they don't see the bigger picture. I've made a mistake. Oh no. Oh, that's okay. I've still got a top 10 finish. That's good. You keep getting top 10 finishes, you're going to do well here. I mean, yeah, that's what Dallas is doing right now, keeping it calm under control out there. So you look at some of these other drivers, and Garen Batten, he's not having the best of days out there. He's in 7th. Well, that's still going to be good for him to get some points. He may lose out to Daniel Thomas, but he's still going to be battling for the rest of those podiums along the light side of Edward Shelley and along the rest of Jeff Smyer. And remember, Jeff Smyer not having the best of days himself. So some of these drivers really looking at now just consolidating what they've got over trying to get a better result out there, because they know this is probably the most important race of the season. Not in terms of where it is in the season, Jake, but in terms of what the track and the combination is. Because this really is, when you look at what the majors do, this is a dark horse.
Yeah, and I think what will also be critical as we watch on board with Dallas Pataska is we're going from Fords and Chevrolets to, well, Fords and Chevrolets next time out, when the mountain will encroach for the Bathurst 500.
And that's going to be big, because the Bathurst 500 is just really challenging. If you did not see the iRacing Bathurst 1000, you know that that is just a very taxing race for teams. But when it comes to the major series, there's no teams. This is all about battling on your own, and you're going to have to do that by yourself to just hopefully work out maybe I can do something. But again, remember, they're allowed 1 race on a different series, and you think to yourself, okay, well, maybe I'll go to the Americas. You've got no choice. Everyone's doing the Bathurst 500. You cannot switch over. You're going to have to take the challenge onto the mountain next time by.
And you'd say a driver like Garen Batten, for example, would be a big threat there, as that is Aussie home territory for him, as Dallas Pataska then continues his work here and ticks over another lap and says, that's number 71 in the books. I've got 38 more to do to put myself where I need to be. And he knows he's only a couple laps away from executing that strategy now that says, I am 1 pit stop away from the end of this race.
And the key thing is, he's got such a gap, he'll be able to actually keep the lead. In fact, Dallas has not lost the lead this race. That is just how strong he has been driving all race. And I wouldn't be surprised if he also has the fastest lap. In fact, yeah, you can actually just see on the timing tower, there's a nice purple line next to his name. So he is looking for the Grand Schellen. And my pronunciations are really bad, but not a thing in America. But over in Europe, That's a big deal to get the fastest lap lead every lap of the race and win the race from starting in pole.
Yes, and it will go one better. It will be a grand slam out there if he can go and lap the entire field, which he's currently on course to. 56 seconds clear of Trevor Vavrosky at the line. And remember, they're only doing 1 minute 23 lap times here is Vavrosky. So the Dallas Pataska, I put him as 25 seconds off the back of catching Trevor Vavrosky, and he's got 38 laps to catch that sort of time. That last lap through, a second and a half quicker than Trevor Vavrosky. So he is on course, and I called it at about 5 laps in. His challenge will be to lap the field. He is going to do exactly that at current pace.
Well, you don't get no bonus points for that. You don't get no, you just get your little brownie points there. We'll get the slash and we'll put a badge on for you, Dallas, that says lap every car. It's a very tough challenge to do in solo racing. And if he does it well. This is the next guy he has to overtake. It's Daniel Thomas, who's 4 seconds up the road from him. And shout out to Daniel for what he's doing. Real good driving. But you also talked about Garen Batten, the Aussie, having that real good advantage again for when we come to Bathurst next time by. Give a shout out to Robert Northway. I know he's a Kiwi, but what a drive he's had today, up 12 position. And you've got to feel he's got a chance of making another position up today. He's only 12 seconds behind Edward Shelley, and he's matching pace. So he has a chance to really do something at the later stages of this race. And to be fair, we're lap 70, well, we're 37 to go.
Lead is in.
I would say we are at that stage.
Final stop then for Dallas Pataska with 37 laps of racing remaining for him. It will tick over to 36. He'll wait for the final grid stall out there to get himself sorted. And one thing about this pit exit that's interesting, if you've got the last stall in the box, you know you've got to light it up and get an immediate turnover 90 degrees to the left. It's one of the few times where putting the car on pole is actually the most disadvantageous.
But thankfully, due to the way it works, the first box in the pit lane is not a box that is used. So this allows Dallas to just get a little bit of a line and does it nicely. If it was the first box there, right in front of the pace car, he'd be in trouble. And a really good worker. I wonder if he was looking at some strategy maps on his other monitor, because he found a place to slot in. Because Garen Batten is just a second up the road. He knows once he warms his tires up, he'll get by, but he doesn't have to worry about anybody right behind. 23 seconds behind him is the next car of any sort of traffic.
Ray Partridge in the pits. Kyle Graham is now into the pits too, so they're both making stops, as is the Swede Hawkins shirt in the 101, and then the 17, Wayne Hutchison, is going to dive into the pits. Hit your marks. You got to do that trade-off when you hit the brakes into pit lane. It's concrete to asphalt, and if you get it wrong, you're sliding.
Not only that, you have to make sure you're in the right position, because you can be too far to the left or too far to the right when it comes to NASCAR racing, and Kyle will come out right away. And he does have a little bit of an advantage over Gary. The gap 10 seconds to Gary. But Gary's got some worn out tires there. Kyle's been driving pretty well, and that's a man who was looking for a top 10 at the start of this race. He's in 10th. He'll probably get a few more positions with David Baker and Tom Guest yet to pit. You've got to feel for him. Robert Northway came into the pits as well, and that's going to be one where you're going to now look to see where he finishes in the race.
Vavrosky's coming in. Jeff Schmeier's had a big spin in front of David H. Baker and Trevor Vavrosky, and both of them are diving in the pits. So Jeff Schmeier's had a bit of a moment. There goes Vavrosky in. The question now is, will Hafler-Darson also jump in? And that is a affirmative yes. Michael Hafler-Darson will follow into the lane. I think Daniel Thomas is the last car out there, and I will just confirm that Ray Partridge has pulled it behind the wall and becomes your second retiree.
And I do wonder if that was a bit of an issue there for Ray. He wasn't having the best of time at the back there, and I do wonder, remember he had that issue earlier, had to take that fast repair, and he did decide to pull it in, and the car doesn't look clean. Well, looks clean, but I do wonder if he's just realized that I'm not getting anywhere, and that's such a shame. This is kind of an achievement to actually finish a full-length Roval race, regardless of where you are. And it does feel like he's unable to do that. Vravoski comes out. Thomas still in the pits. Garen Batten is coming across the start-finish line. Garen will look to make a overtake here onto Daniel Thomas, but that's going to be an interesting battle for P5.
It is, but remember, Garen's got one more stop, so while it is a battle for P5 at the moment, that will dissipate later on. Daniel Thomas up to speed, runs very wide there, and I think may have just clipped the barrier there, going through between 3 and 4, and now has a lot of work to now sidle himself up with. I think he didn't actually make any contact, but he's got to get those tyres up to 10.
Got to get him up to 10th. And also, here's another issue, because there is Daniel Thomas right over to Dallas Pataska right behind Daniel Thomas and Garen Batten. And onto the throttle they go. And Batten gets the worst launch with the rubbered-in tyres there. Have to let the leader go on by. He doesn't need to, but he's a little bit slower. It's just the etiquette there. Able to just keep on going. But that's going to lose him some time. And like Jake said, Garen has to take another pit stop. It will be a splash and dash. It won't be the full 40 seconds long. Maybe just take one side of tyres and not all four. But he will need to splash and dash. And in fact, him, Edward Shelley, and Tom Guess all will need to pit one more time.
And Garen Batten struggling a bit here with Daniel Thomas, with Dallas Pataska through. It's a case of they all check up each other, and the drive off the exit key for Daniel as he now holds himself with that 5th place. And while the gap is 9/10 of a second now between Edward Shelley and Trevor Vravoski, the key here is how quick that stop's going to be from Edward Shelley, because if he can get in and out of lane within 35 seconds, that's one thing. If you can get it done within 30, that's another. So I think he'll be eyeing up Daniel Thomas here with Edward Shelley and go, yeah, I think 4th is probably what I'm aiming for today. I think Hafler-Darson's too close.
Yeah, Hafler-Darson's too close. Vravoski's definitely out of the picture for him. He may look for 3, because 3 is for Dale. You do wonder if he's able to just maybe push on a little bit here, but he's not been able to push as much as you would think with fresher tyres or more fresher tyre, being that he's had to take that extra pit stop. But he has been trying his best, and the strategy, you've got to think, another Fusion driver doing this 4-stop strategy. And I do wonder if that is just because, again, you go back to what you said, Jake, with that setup, maybe they just couldn't get anything out of that setup. Tyres were still running, and maybe they just went to this plan B, and hopefully not like Ferrari going to a plan C, D, E, and F, because unfortunately the A plan hasn't been able to be hit by these drivers today.
It hasn't, but Vravoski here has got a lot more tyre to work with than what Edward Shelley has at the moment. Shelley has to stick himself on the outside. He can't get the drive off the exit, but he hits an extra gear, and suddenly that Fusion Mustang starts to just gallop a little bit more away there from the Mustang that Trevor Vravoski has available to him. And I doubt that that Mustang that Vravoski's running has a rotary engine or the like, but will certainly be looking to try and gallivant over into 2nd place.
Well, I'm just trying to see if I can hear it from across the pond, and I can't, so definitely not a rotary engine. So let's just hope it's not going to be a certain former F1 driver who had a little bit of a moment and collapses when he comes out of the car and can't remember what he does. But Vravoski has to take a slowdown, and you would think that's a problem. Is it a problem? All he has to do with Shelley right now is match him, because he knows Shelley is on a different strategy and has to pit again. For Vravoski, he just has to just hit his marks and follow Shelley, because that will put the pressure on. Shelley has to go faster. Shelley can't go faster at the moment. That's big. And now you have to look at Hafler-Darson. Can he match Hafler-Darson out there? And that's the next question. We can't tell at the moment. Hafler-Darson with an invalid lap due to himself having to serve a slowdown.
Yeah, so Michael Hafler-Darson is still stuck at about 15 seconds. Daniel Thomas, again, very aggressive on the brakes here against Garen Batten. Now, really has to try and figure out what he wants to do. Batten with a 22.5, no lap time set there for Daniel Thomas, and so Garen Batten doing what he needs to do in order to keep himself steady in this race. And it was a big cut of the final chicane, which cost Daniel Thomas that P5. So Garen Batten takes advantage of that, and Garen's just got to run here because he knows his race isn't going to be directly with Daniel Thomas, or rather it's with Robert Northway.
Yeah, and that's quite a bit of a gap, because that gap there's about 18, 19 seconds. Don't want to get caught up with the battling Tom Guest as well. Robert will be looking at what a performance that would be for Robert to make that move, to make it after where he started. Bravoski still putting the pressure on Edward Shelley. He knows he doesn't have to wait, but he also realizes there's probably a little bit of pride at stake here, because nobody wants to be lapped by Pataska. Dvorovsky wants to try and avoid Pataska getting that ability.
Whoa!
Hey, what a save from Edward Shelley.
Wow, Edward Shelley had to get on the binders the moment the car began to snap, and was that the telling moment, because that was, I hit the brakes on the top of the crest and the car just snapped sideways.
I'm hearing a guitar solo. It must be Freebird. He had to hold on to that, and Bravoski, he also had to get on it. We talk about having to get on the brakes to stop that sliding car from Shelley. Bravoski had to get on the brakes mid-corner so he didn't go into the side of him, and that's some real good driving by both drivers to keep that just a 2x at best out there today. Garen Batten, he now has to hopefully not do the same thing as his Fusion brethren, but he's got Daniel Thomas battling again, and the same situation here. He knows, does Daniel, that Garen has to make the pit stop. So the Welshman is just going to have to keep it safe. And interestingly, Edward Shelley has played the Nico Rosberg card here. My tyres are overheated. This is smart, because now he's got more laps to work with to get the positions.
Look, if he's burnt his tyres out, sliding them about, and he says, it's too much for me, I may as well take my final pit stop now and work through towards the end of the race. So an important phase. There goes Daniel Thomas through and taking that place. It's 4 tyres on for Edward Shelley. He gets his fuel and goes, and is now going to be in full chase mode, trying to hunt this down. Critically, he's going to be ahead of the likes of Robert Northway by a handful of seconds, but now will really need to jump to try and get himself back to where he wants to be. He'll be looking to try and reverse engineer this race to chase down those who have already pitted in front of him. It's Daniel Thomas who will be his first port of call.
Yeah, Garen Batten, he won't have to worry about his teammate, because his teammate is now on a different pit cycle. Very interesting from Shelley to basically go the same way. And he had been able to go 30 laps before, but he struggled in 30 laps, and that was barely 30 laps again. So what is Edward looking for here? He's looking to just hold station, but also push on. So the question now is, can he hold on to those tires? Eyes will be on him later in the run. Eyes on this battle right now, because Daniel is looking to push Garen back to the limit. And Garen now probably the last man that needs to make a pit stop. Actually, Garen Thomas will need to make a pit stop as well. But in terms of these battles, the last man to really need that pit stop. A little bit of a wiggle for Daniel there. But you can see he's pushing hard. He doesn't want to get this position with the pit stop. He wants to get it on the track.
If he wants it on track, he's going to have to go and gain it on track here. But he knows Garen Batten is on limited time. But Garen's got about, I would say, 18 laps maximum here to go and get himself sorted and ready for it. It's been a long race in terms of how everyone's been going about. They're soon about to tick over the 2-hour period, and so that's when you start feeling the fatigue and that tiredness really set in for these drivers.
Let me tell you, I did 2 hours last night in a GT3.
Caution!
Wait, has a caution been thrown?
Well, well, well. And that's Tom Guest in the wall, and that might be one of the reasons why. So they might be on a count here today, which sorts themselves out in terms of, okay, these are how many incident points we hit before a safety car gets thrown, and that completely changes the context of this race.
Well, that's just changed everything, because I don't know if we're going to get a lucky dog. Garen Batten will get the lucky dog. Bravoski and Haflidarson will be battling for sure. Look at the battles we've got, but also Garen Batten needs to pit. Now, Garen Batten is a lap down. Also a lap down. Daniel Thomas, Edward Shelley, Robert Northway, David Baker, and Tom Guest. Not a lot of cars he has to navigate here for the final 25 laps. This is a big change to this race.
And what it also does is it puts a very firm rubber stamp on the fact that Dallas Pataska will not win by a lap.
I'm not going to say cahoots, so that would be quite funny to say cahoots. But that is a good point, that now Dallas, he doesn't have to worry too much either, though, because there's only two cars he had to battle against, and, well, he's been outlapping them non-stop. But the question now comes, does he take fresh tyres for the end of the race? If he goes in, everybody goes in.
I think that if you haven't pitted, or you have pitted, you might want to take a new fresh set, and there's no real emphasis not to out there at the moment with a safety car being thrown, because they've got unlimited sets of tyres.
Well, if you got them, use them. You know, you can't hand them back after the race. You can't keep them for souvenirs, so you might as well just use them all up. So this could be interesting, but if Dallas pits and everyone else pits, this could be an interesting battle, because Garen Batten needs to pit for fuel, but he also knows that if the top three pit, he could get a wave around. So the risk reward here is Garen has to pit, Tom Guest has to pit, Gary Thomas would be wise to pit, Jeff Meyer would be wise to pit, Sebastian Jackson wise to pit as well. These guys need to look for this, and when they come out the bus stop, we should get the indication that the pit lane is open. I wouldn't say all 16 of these cars, when we start with 18, we're now down to 16. Wouldn't say all of them would pit, though. I would say a handful will definitely be pitting.
I think this gives a good amount of emphasis to Edward Shelley that he pits just before the safety car comes out, and it gives him everything he wants, which is back into position. I can start attacking. But this now becomes a different race entirely. So Trevor Vavrovsky joins the back of the group at about 2.5 seconds adrift. You've got the likes then of those around. Michael Hafler-Darson given a new lease of life. And remember, he'd been playing a fuel save game for the majority of this race. He can now go out there and be aggressive in terms of how he wants to go. And we're going to get some takers into the pit. So Gary Thomas will jump in. Daniel Thomas will also follow through. Robert Northway will take a stop. So too will Seb Jackson. And critically here, Trevor Vavrovsky has gone for a new set of tyres and is joined by Michael Hafler-Darson.
And I think that is smart from Hafler-Darson to follow in Vavrovsky. Now the question comes, though, are they both taking 4? I mean, you would say, yes, take 4, but you don't need to take a full tank of fuel. So let's just see what happens here, because Hafler-Darson will go up, Vavrovsky goes up as well, and he's definitely taken 2. He's taken 4. Hafler-Darson, what's he going to do? Is he taking 4? No. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. A late call there to take 4. And Batten does get the wave around. He's at the pit, though, but he does get the wave around.
He is a lucky, lucky dog indeed, is Garen Batten. And remember the championship in this case, because Garen Batten is the nearest challenger today to Trevor Vavrovsky's 130, 140 odd points back. And what was looking like a day where he was going to be 5th or 6th and Edward Shelley would start gaining ground, Edward Shelley is now mired a lap down, and Garen Batten has a lucky dog and license to attack Hafler-Darson and Vavrovsky.
But he also has to be careful he doesn't overdo it. I'm not sure what his fast repair status is, because some drivers may have taken them on one of their normal pit stops due to something that happened early in the race. So now the question comes, do you have your fast repair? You don't have a license to kill. You're not James Bond. Your name's Garen Batten. You've got a license to go like a bat out of hell, however. Your name's not Meatloaf, but Garen now is in a really prime spot, and he'll come and take that pit stop. He'll come with no problem, because the rest of the field hasn't even got to the bus stop yet. So this is good for him. The only issue now is letting everybody get by them so the top 4 can all get ready to dance.
Well, they're not going to move the lap cars, which are in the middle, out of the way. So for Trevor Vavrovsky, who pitted, he's got to get through Edward Shelley, Håkan Schurt, Wayne Hutchison, Joshua Hampton, Kyle Graham, Daniel Thomas, Robert Northway, Gary Thomas, just to get through. I count that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars between him and Dallas Pataska at the moment. Michael Hafler-Darson is only 2 cars behind him. And then for Garin Batten, he's only going to cycle out 1 car behind Michael Hafler-Darson.
Oh, of course, yes, because remember, at the end of the day, though, if you've got the lucky dog, you have to go to the longest line. And that's going to be another interesting point of this day, is what happens for that. So Garin will have that ability to attack. He'll have to be very careful in what he does. Now, does Dallas go for one more pit stop here? Got one more chance. He doesn't. I'll tell you who does. Kyle Graham. And I think Kyle's done that because he's the only man 2 laps down officially. But also, this allows him to get cycled to the back of the field with no issue. This is not him trying to basically cheat the pit lane, because technically the pit lane is faster than the safety car. We're not going to have any Formula E style here. No, we're not going to have Alan McNish running down the pit lane. But Garin Batten gets up to speed. He'll come across, but he's got quite a way to go. And if they start to form up, the pace car lights are off.
Yeah, so that will mean that we'll be going back to running on lap 86 here today, out of 109, and that will leave just 23 laps to get it all sorted, with everyone crunched up on top of everybody else. Garin Batten will be looking around through this final corner, and he will see that Kyle Graham has got out ahead of him. So that will be another car in between now. Make that 2, but it will be a 2-wide restart then as we get ourselves ready. And now at the front, it is Dallas Pataska, Trevor Vorosky, and Michael Hafler-Darson. They're going to have to wait for a very big Garin Batten-sized hole to get himself back into line.
But the key thing here as well, who's got the fresh tyres? Vorosky, Hafler-Darson, and Garin Batten. Yes, we're talking 10 laps here, but look how long they're going to go. They've lost about 4 laps maybe of racing. So the tyres aren't going to be that worn, or sorry, that used. However, Dallas has got worn tyres. They've got marbles on them. They've got a little bit of heat to them. That's crucial, because if he's got that heat, that allows him to just get a better start compared to Vorosky, Hafler-Darson, and Batten, who are going to have to launch off with cold tyres on the start. It's going to be just like the start of the race once again. So eyes on Robert Northway, he may get that P5. Eyes on Batten, he may get that P2.
Well, eyes everywhere you can. Sebastian Jackson will be last one to the back of the group. He's 4 laps down. The car he's trying to battle with is 5th or 6th in the line right now, and that's Håkan Schurt. So he's going to have to wait at the back as everybody looks to play their game that's needed. Daniel Thomas with a lot of work to do against Edward Shelley, but the key is this race in front is now 4 to the floor. Dallas Pataska, the driver who has come over from Americas, looking to try and prove it's his America's home for racing. Trevor Vorosky, championship leader in the European division. Michael Hafler-Darson, who is here on a part-time schedule, and Garin Batten, who has been given the ultimate lease of life back into a championship scrap with car 10 and Trevor, who is out there. Porsche iRacing first safety car hits the lane, and the control once more in the control of Dallas Pataska as he looks to try and go lights to flag. Green flag in the air, very aggressive over the curb from Vorosky, and we're back running once more.
Back running once more, and we'll see who gets the better run here, where it definitely is going to be Edward Shelley. Just manages to jump around Garin Batten, and Garin's not had the start he wanted. The rest of the field, they've kept together. Vorosky trying to pull away and trying to get a good start here in the back of the field. Still battles going on. Thomas Northway having a little scrap and almost getting caught out is Wayne Hutchinson, but Northway cannot get past Daniel Thomas early doors. Also other battles here. This is for 11 as Josh Hampton's gone the wrong way. He's gone down all the way to 14. And David Baker right behind them.
Whoa!
Yes, he's had a slide, and is he going to catch anybody? Everybody gets out the way.
How has that managed to avoid everyone? Tom Gass leaves his lines across turn 6, and there goes Jeff Schmeier with a doing. He was too quick on the power on the exit, and now he struggles out of 7. So a couple spins as we go back to running, but critically, it's not Garin Batten making moves through, it's Edward Shelley as Robert Northway tips up the tyres on 2 as he gets his pass done on Daniel Thomas.
He gets it done, but he didn't get the best of runs here, and Thomas will probably look to see if he can do some outbraking. It's a no from me, Simon, as he just has to hold on. So Northway up into 6th. 4 seconds up the road would be that. Hafler-Darson has to serve a slowdown as well. Hackton should a slowdown. Shelley a slowdown. Everybody taking slowdowns at the moment. They are going too hard, too fast at the moment. This has changed the game, and it's changed the game how we expected it. It was chaos.
Well, Hafler-Darson's going to try and serve this tactically, and Edward Shelley is also going to try and serve this tactically. If they're not careful, they could end up with some black flag penalties. Hafler-Darson's got his cleared. Edward Shelley only now clears his penalty before a full black flag is there. Trevor Vavrovsky, remember, is on much fresher tyres compared to Dallas Pataska, and that's his only saving grace of if he wants to challenge for the win today.
Well, his only saving grace, but already Pataska is pulling ahead. When they did the first lap at the start of the race, Pataska put a second lead over everybody after one lap. It's not, well, we're not even through one lap yet. It is just 7/10 out there at the moment. And now Daniel Thomas still with this battle, and what a battle this is going to be between Northway and Thomas for this 6th and 7th position. They're hoping that Shelley maybe has a couple slowdowns, try and catch up there. Top 5 would be fantastic out there for the drivers, but they just have to keep hitting their marks at the moment. The last thing they want to do is get in that wall.
No, they don't want this race to go the wrong way, and a fastest lap for Trevor Vavrovsky, a 1:20.6, just a 10th shy of Dallas Pataska at this moment. David H. Baker is in 8th place, Daniel Thomas 7th, but for Dallas, he now knows that this is going to be a showdown right now in this one. He's been dominant all race. He's just trying to rely on Trevor's tyres giving up the ghost at some point with 22 to go. A good launch through turn 7, and he's going to keep himself very much looking in that rear view mirror going, yeah, I know you are there, but can you catch this?
You know, it's interesting because they came across the start-finish line and Trevor was right on the back of Dallas there. And I do wonder there, because you come out of turn 7, Brovosky's nowhere near. Nowhere near. And I do wonder if it's just a case of this is a track of 2 halves at the moment. And how long is too long for Brovosky? When are these tyres going to give up the ghost? Because he's taking the fastest lap away from Pataska. The Grand Chelem is out of the question right now. Pataska is just driving to hold this win. And he's just hitting his marks, and he's hitting his marks so cleanly. But look at that gap. They came out of turn 7, almost a second lead. They came out the final corner, 3/10 of a lead.
Well, that was a 1:20.661 for Dallas Pataska on that lap. He responds with his fastest lap of the race, and that is Daniel Thomas in trouble. Wrong place, wrong time for the driver in 7th position overall, and he finds a lot of time losing with a little half slide as he came off the curb and just tapped the wall on the outside.
That little camber through 1 and 2 just caught him off a little bit there, lost the balance of the car. The aero just said no and left him. Still battles elsewhere as well. Wayne Hutchinson battling Gary Thomas in Canada, wants to try and beat the Brits at something. They couldn't do it last weekend. Can they do it this weekend? I know it was England, but can they do it this weekend? You do wonder, but Gary unable to get that launch, and this is the name of the game. Some drivers who took the pits some drivers who went to the pits during the pit stop during the caution, able to get fresher tyres, and it's starting to show.
It is, and so you will gain that advantage and you will use it to the best of your ability, and this is where you start hunting down and saying, what can you do? 20.7 plays a 20.9. Vavrovsky is losing a couple tenths of a second every single lap now, and he knows he's building that gap to Michael Hafler-Darson, to Garen Batten, who is listless, I would say, in 5th position. The confidence through the corners still very much there. Gary Thomas still trying to find a way up past Wayne at this stage to go to 11th. Wayne, how are you now? Well, very good. I'm stuck in 11th place, and this is the best I can hope for.
best he can hope for with the number 17 against the number 7, but hopefully he can hold this position. What has Gary got left? Now, he had the fresher tires, but he can't get them going out of turn 7 and out of some of these corners. They come up to the top into turn 6, now down into 7. This is where Gary's been struggling this race, and Wayne, better line again, tries to get on the throttle, and look at that confidence. Some drivers would have backed out of the throttle there thinking they were going to hit the wall. Not Wayne. He realized he was safe after doing 2 hours of driving here. He knew he had enough safety there onto that wall, and just able to get down to the throttle. Gary, he may be able to catch him from that straight, just not enough right now.
And the deadlock broken between Pataska and Bobrovsky. A mistake at turn 5 for Trevor means that gap has exploded out to 1.3 seconds here. Dallas Pataska's got some safety blanket in play now as Daniel Thomas still tries to work his way back. Robert Northway still having to defend, and this now for 6th and 7th, I think is going to be on right till the end of this race, as Northway, remember, coming in from the international region, is looking to try and prove that he can hold himself steady, not with that sort of wiggle coming out of the corner. Daniel Thomas can only sit on the back here on the short shoot run to turn 5, and over the top of the hill, looking for a big overtaking line at 6 leading to 7. It's covered on the inside, so the long way around you're gonna have to go, Danny boy, if you want to try and get that pass. Robert Northway holds for now.
Gonna have to go around the world the wrong way there as Northway decides to hold the inside to stop any momentum from Thomas there. That's a little bit of a smart move there. I'm gonna compromise myself, but I know Shelley's out the equation. He's 10 seconds up the road. You're my battle partner right now, pal, is Robert Northway saying right now. And he held off that charge from Daniel Thomas. He's only going to have to do another 19 laps of that defending. How long can one man hold off a driver? That's a long time and a long ask at the time. But I reckon he's probably got it in him right now, providing, knock on wood, he keeps it cool, calm and collective. And that bus stop says he's doing just that.
Well, he's been very calm in the way that he's gone about this process. He hasn't really worried about what's going on behind him. The 60 of Daniel Thomas has been there at every stage, but number 46 has been driving a wonderful showcase of action at the moment. Now the drive needed out of 4 once more, and it's not going to be in a place where it opens up that opportunity. A little wide there from Northway. It's later to that outside line for Daniel Thomas, and again he will have to go to the outside. I think he's just got to wait on it a little bit more and try and cross him over, or he can get some really nice drive using the banking for help. But again, he's stuck on the high side, and that is the path of more resistance compared to Robert Northway. He staves off the charge again.
Yeah, I thought he almost had that for a moment around the outside. Very interesting. And look at the braking from Northway. The car was sliding under braking, so that's a sign that he's having a little bit of a struggle out there to hold off Daniel Thomas. And when is the straw on the camel's back going to break? Because at this stage of the race, Robert's doing some fantastic driving, but does he want to save himself a good finish here? 7th is still good. 6th would be better, but he has to think to himself, if he overdrives, he's going to go in the wall, and he probably may go down to 9th position, because he may have to take an overtake here or a fast repair. Meanwhile, Gary Thomas in the background, that's another battle happening. Nice overtake through the final chicane on Wayne Hutchinson.
Yeah, opened the chance when Wayne was earlier on the brakes, coming out of the corner there of NASCAR 4. It just opened up the opportunity for Gary Thomas to go sailing down the inside, and no one was going to catch him in terms of making that pass Wayne Hutchinson through. And they will have David H. Baker trying to get through the pair of them, because David is trying to run away from Tom Guest.
Well, big development. Remember I was saying that Northway had to give up on Edward Shelley. Shelley went into the wall on 6, and he's had to park the car, and now he's only 3 seconds ahead of Robert Northway, and I don't know what speed he's got and what damage he's got. Gary Thomas continues on as well, and that's a good line out because of David Baker, and David is now that little bookmark in the middle of these two. But that battle for 5th place has just got interesting as well, and I'll tell you what, the battle for 2nd, Michael Hafpedersen, he is closing that gap ever so slightly.
Well, we've been talking about the troubles of Edward Shelley. He's put it in the barriers once already this race with a car that is tight, and there's no other description for that. That's a car that's tight.
And he did that before, and remember the damage he had on the front of that car, and he used the fast repair. So it actually has less damage this time, I think. It's not as smashed in. Oh, no, I was looking at the Ron Fusion car. It's absolutely smashed in. I was looking at Daniel Thomas. And Daniel Thomas has got a little bit of a car that doesn't have much damage, but he's still battling Robert Northway. They know they have to catch this car, and that has seen a lot of damage. That is what you call a well-used car when we go back to one of those sellers lists.
Well, it's what we would say in America here, Craig, as a modified, and what an up and under comes into play from Daniel Thomas behind, who looks to try and get by Robert Northway just in the back of shot. You see it now on screen as now Daniel Thomas gets the run to turn 10. Northway might try and hold it around the outside. He can't. Move made.
Move made, and is that the cork in the champagne bottle? Because he can now see a wounded Edward Shelley up ahead. Now, he had to make that overtake, but I'm curious what pace Shelley had, because when you open up onto the oval, that's where all the speed is. We'll see the lap times when they come by. Daniel Thomas comes through the final chicane. Shelley's lap time was a 1:22.4, and Daniel had to make that overtake. I don't think it's going to be faster, no. It's a 1:22.5. He's not there yet, but the gap is shrinking, and now Daniel's got clear air. I do wonder if he's just going to be able to pull well ahead of Daniel Northway, Robert Northway.
Well, there's the question with Robert Northway behind him. Daniel Thomas is doing what he can, but Edward Shelley, even with a damaged piece of machinery, is doing what he can. Gap out to 3 seconds at the front for Dallas Pataska. He's now in race management mode because Trevor Vavrosky, I think, will be looking more behind rather than in front, because Michael Hafler-Darson is only there at 2.2, 2.3 seconds. That's enough to keep yourself noticed in a race like this.
Yeah, and that's all you need to do. You actually need to keep that pace and keep that gap shrinking at that rate, because it may sound like it's not enough, and you think you've got, well, you can see it on the timing tower, 15, about to be 14 to go. However, you look at that, 3/10 every 15 laps, that goes up, and I do see Daniel Thomas having a little bit of a moment out there. No, there he is, just going on by. It's Robert Northway who had a small disconnect, but Daniel Thomas, yes, actually, he lost that position.
Yeah, he overshot the chicane going into turn 10, and that's why he's had to give it back up, because the slowdown penalty goes back in favour of Robert Northway. So Northway takes 6th back again, and all of this chop and change is giving a chance for Edward Shelley to run away.
That's just what Shelley needs to see in the back behind him. Needs to see those two drinking it out, and the gap now is 4.5 seconds. In fact, you look at it, he took over a second away from Thomas and almost a second away from Northway. So these two, they had a shot there with a wounded and damaged Edward Shelley car. They can't do it now. They're just going to have to battle one another. And again, the defense from Northway there through turn 7. We've talked about it so many times in the last couple of hours. That has provided some real good opportunities for moves and some real good opportunities for defending.
So, defence is going to play a very important card as Wayne Hutchison now in 12th. Sees Gary Thomas starting to run away. Joshua Hampton is a long way away by comparison, along with his battle with Jeff Schmeier. Sebastian Jackson and Hawkins Shirt are battling out there for 15th and 16th positions too. So you've got a little battle here and a little battle there, and the biggest little battle out there of all of them is that Michael Hafler-Darson's got the gap down to 1.1 against Trevor Vavrosky.
Yep, and he's really been able to use these fresh tyres better than what Vavrosky has, and the last lap was a 22.1 for Vavrosky and a 21.2 for Hafler-Darson. You don't need to do maths to see what that is. That just goes to show that this car, this 81, is right on the back of Vavrosky. Not the best at turn 7. He doesn't worry about that. He's got time. He just needs to make sure he doesn't play with his food. But right now, I don't know if you can smell it. I think he can smell his prey.
I think he can smell second place, and I think he knows it's not too far away. There'll be 12 to go at the line as they will tick on for lap 98. Garen Batten's gone straight on at the chicane. Edward Shelley has gone straight on at the chicane. So a gust of wind takes both Fusion Gold cars then off the road, but Wawrowski is looking back there. 6/10.
6/10. I'll tell you what, that wind is now easterly. The wind is easterly, so at the start of the race, it was a tailwind. Now it's a side wind going into the chicane on both sides of the track. There is no place for you that you're getting a tailwind until you come onto the back part, the 3 and 4 of NASCAR. And now it's just starting to show that that's not an issue anymore. The wind is out of factor. This is just drivers having to hold on. And I wonder when can they go, because look how close it's getting now. Mohammed Darson needs a good run, but a wiggle on the throttle. The question now is, has he used his tyres up way too early here? Because he's got up to Wawrowski. That's stage 1. Stage 2 is to overtake him. Stage 3 is question mark, and stage 4 is profit.
Well, as that goes, it's about can you chuck it in, because Hafler Darson on a 21.2 was half a second quicker than Dallas Pataska on that last lap. So if he's got this pace to catch Wawrowski, he's got this pace to catch Dallas as well, so he's got to clear him quickly.
And this is where that cork comes in right now, because he wants to pop that bottle. A P2 would be fantastic for Hafler Darson. If he's got the pace, and he's getting held up from Wawrowski right now, he may have that pace, but the 11 to go. And you look at the times again. 2/10 over Pataska, 3/10 over Wawrowski. He definitely got the pace right now. The fastest man on the track is not the leader. It's this in the 81. It's the Swede. It's Hafler Darson. And last I checked, the Swedes don't know what a Roval is.
No, they don't. And Michael Hafler Darson is driving with a lot of pace. Big send, look up, then through turn 6. And he will drop all that time again.
Remember that moment we saw early at the start of the race with Revered? That looked like what Hafler Darson was trying to do there. He thought he saw an opportunity. Well, the opportunity was not there. And all that time he's gained, everything he's gained, it's gone. It's gone now. The gap is 1 second. And the numbers are starting to tick down. It will be 10 to go when they come around once again. They're at the halfway point of this lap. 10 to go. What has he got? He knows he can catch up. In fact, in this time I've been talking, Jake, he's gained 3/10 already. He's still pushing like a madman.
He's pushing, but he knows as well that he'll be dropping that time to Dallas Pataska, who is out there at the moment. Daniel Thomas still has eyes on Robert Northway here, but Northway is doing only what he can at this moment, knowing that Edward Shelley is a little bit too far away at this point. Northway holding himself then through 14 into 15. Now hit a small flick, and now 16 and 17, the final 2 corners out there overall. Big chase over onto the back bumper for Daniel Thomas. This could be a send into 1. It won't be.
You know, I think he thought about it, but having to take a lift what he got out of 17, I think that may have stopped it, because he had such a run. And he was unable to use that run. Again, a run here from Thomas. And remember, these guys both took tyres at the same time. They're both on pressure tyres. Can the Kiwi SimRacing driver, can he do anything here to hold off this Welshman? It's so tight, because this is the same similar situation with Wawrowski and Hafler Darson. They both have the pace, but they're just getting held up here, and they're trying to find the opportunity without going. And again, more defense there from the Kiwi.
Yeah, that was deliberately narrow from Robert Northway. Daniel Thomas hooks him on the rear. And the thing about NASCAR-style racing, if you get a push and you turn someone around, if you're trying to block like that, that is license to get turned.
Well, license to get turned. To be fair, that's now twice in a lap that Daniel, almost 3 times in a lap, that Daniel had a chance to run into the back of Northway's car, and that's not what he's looking to do. He's looking to make this move clean, and in they go again. You can see that's the sports car in him. Look at him, make a mistake, and the pressure's gone. And that, with Daniel Thomas extorting all the pressure.
Well, if you're going to stay on the rear time and time and time again, At some point, something's got to give, and it gives in the form of Robert Northway in the late stages of this race, inside of 10 to go, and he struggles. And speaking of struggles, Trevor Vavrosky has the worst corner at turn 7 ever, and there finally is the pass for Michael Haflidarsson.
Problem is now it's 9 to go, it'll be 8.5 to go basically, and the gap is 5 seconds. And he was 3/10 slower last time. Who gets the better run? It's a pedestrian, but a safe run through the chicane for Haflidarsson, because he knows that if he got a slowdown, he'd be right behind Vavrosky again. That was him playing it safe and smart there. Vavrosky gets a better run, can't do much about it. Gotta be careful, because 15 seconds behind is Baton. They don't want to run into that problem down the line.
Well, they've got a big gap over Garen Baton. If one of them throws it in the wall in such a way it damages, that's going to cost both of themselves a chance of a podium potentially. So they don't want to be getting into that sort of game. They know how tough this race is, and they know that this is a strong scrap between a driver who wants a full-time race seat next season going for the championship and the driver who leads the championship outright. There is that tiny thought that will go into the back of Trevor's head that says, what would you do if this costs you the championship if you get it wrong?
But at the same time, there's also that thing, what would you do if this is where you need that P2? He has to weigh out the options here. The scales are trying to be balanced in his head, and he can't really balance them while he's also trying to shift his car up and shift his car down on the brake. So he's just going to have to wait for his opportunity. If he stays P3, he stays P3. He would love a second place, but he has to make him hope for a mistake. But as you see, Haflidarsson made the mistake, and at the same time, Vavrosky made the same mistake. He can't afford that right now.
No, and at the same time, if you're going to make a mistake, the same place is going to be the place where it hurts the most, because you knew you had a chance of gathering it back. Michael Haflidarsson trying to stretch his legs at 0.4 of a second now, and that gives you a tiny bit of breathing room, but Vavrosky has been so alert through the opening couple corners. I think he's the fastest through turn 1 and 2 every single lap, but here at 3 he runs very deep in, and Haflidarsson just takes a smoother line, and that gap remains 0.4 of a second. Now they start chasing up through turn 5 and heading over to turn 6, all the road being used by Michael, and for the moment it's a case of Vavrosky has got to find a place where it works. It won't do down at the hairpin.
We've got some interesting things while this is happening. That battle for P5 is back on. A spin at turn 7 last lap for Edward Shelley, and almost going into the wall at turn 3 and 4 for Edward Shelley means he's got Daniel Thomas right behind him. So you look at the battles on the track now with the final 7 laps to go, and you've got Haflidarsson battling Vavrosky, Shelley's battling Daniel Thomas. In the background, Gary Thomas still battling Wayne Hutchinson just. So you've got these 3 battles, and 2 of them are very vital to what can happen in some people's championship with 2 races left after this today.
And we've got lap traffic here inside the final 7 laps now to 6 laps to go here, because they've got Sebastian Jackson, Joshua Hampton and soon Carl Graham to jump up on the realms of possibility. That's what Dallas Pataska has gone through, but Daniel Thomas, I think, wants to eye up the wound in Edward Shelley. That one for a top 5. And remember, Edward Shelley still has outside hopes of picking up the championship. He needs help, and Daniel Thomas battling him will not.
Nope, Daniel Thomas is battling for his own positions in the championship now. But bragging rights, he needs to get by Edward Shelley just to help him out there. But with a wounded car that Shelley's got, I do wonder what he could do. Dallas is in his own at the moment. Maybe he'll try and get that fastest lap back. Who knows? But those tires are screaming. He did not take a pit stop when he could have at that caution. So he's 10 lap older tires than the rest of the drivers on the lead lap. But you wouldn't know it, being that he's managed to pull a 5-second lead over everybody. He's going to come across the line with 5 to go. Garen Baton is still there. He's battling no one at the moment. This is the bubble of bubble racing.
Yeah, he is absolutely nowhere compared to everyone else. He'll take his 4th and say, I'm so lucky for that lucky dog, which got him into that position. But as it goes. 1 second ticks over for Trevor Vavrosky, and now 1.8 because he's cut the chicane, and he has tagged the wall out the chicane as well, which now gives him a little bit of a something to think about. So that one certainly hurts, and now it opens up the battle behind Garen Batten right now of Edward Shelley versus Daniel Thomas. And so you see them at this point and go, well, what can I do to gather it back in? 23 flat, plays 22.8. Shelley, the better on that lap.
That's interesting because for the last few laps, it's been Thomas the better of the two. And all of a sudden, Shelley's just got that going. And he's had a couple lockups. He's had a couple spins. He's had a couple moments out there. Now he just needs to put his head down because one more mistake and he will be losing that 5th place. And this is going to be nip and tuck with 5 to go. It's almost 4.5 to go right now, but you can see through this final section here, the new section of the Roval, well, it's better for Thomas and gets a good run. Very wide for Shelley. This brings Thomas back into the fray. Tries to get a bit of speed by going down, and almost a mini serpentine on the banking there for Shelley.
And as that happened, Trevor Vavrosky had a spin at turn 7, so the gap to Garen Batten is now down to 12 seconds here in this race. He's 6 off the back of Michael Hafler-Darson, so Shelley is trying to break away with what he can. He knows with the damage to the front, he's going to be a little bit lacking in a straight line. Daniel Thomas is going to be better through the banked corners as we go to Dallas Pataska. 4 laps away, or soon to be 3.5 away from victory here in Charlotte. But for the moment, I still want to play the focus game on where they are. Edward Shelley has had to go quicker. 22.5 plays 22.6. Hafler-Darson, a comfortable second place, is keeping one Mr. Dallas Pataska honest. But it is a bridge too far without a mistake from a faultless driver like Dallas Pataska. Vavrosky now needs to settle in for 3rd.
I can't remember the last time I saw Pataska make a mistake, and I'm knocking on wood when I say that. So this looks pretty calm and collected for him. Garen Batten, well, he got that P4 with the lucky dog. He played that really smartly, not on purpose, got the lucky dog. That helps him in the battles with the rest of the field. P4 will not be the result he wanted, but the result that I think he'll be happy with. Daniel Thomas, again, more issues out there. He's got the fresher tyres by 3 laps to Edward Shelley, unable to make it work. And if Edward can make this work with a really weird 4 stopper, because it really was a weird 4 stopper, not of equal length of all pit cycles, it will be a fantastic drive for him. But you've got to give a shout out to Robert Northway if we look at him one more time. Plus 11 at the moment, holding off David Baker, who's 5 seconds behind, and he's done a fantastic job to get there today.
A job well done for Robert Northway. He'll take these points and say, I'll carry them back to the international region and say, that's the best I could do with it. With the likes of Edward Shelley and Daniel Thomas together working hard for it now, you're starting to sense that these drivers can finally find their reprieve only a few laps away from the end. Edward Shelley now brings himself in with a slowdown. Edward Shelley has a slowdown penalty, and he will desperately need to try and serve it here, because all the while closing in is Daniel Thomas here at 6, down the inside. Edward Shelley gets it served, but he's got no drive through the corner. Brilliant stuff for Daniel Thomas, who overcooks it into the corner, and in slow-mo they will try and get off the exit.
They both hit the slowdown there. Well, not the slowdown. They both went slow through 6. And all of a sudden, they both had to take slower lines into 7. And that caught both drivers off. Shelley never missed the chicane. He cut the chicane on the right-hander at 16. And that was enough for him. But this is big. Daniel Thomas out of nowhere. He's a net -1 for the day. But he's back up into 5th position, and now he's going to have to wait for 2 laps.
Let's take a look at the replay here, and this is Trevor Vavrosky's spin that we noted earlier. Just tried to tip it into the corner, and then round he went, and so easily done. You can see all the marble build-up then on the outside, and there for Trevor Vavrosky, that's what took him out from contention with Michael Hafler-Darson for 2nd.
And then we'll just see this as well. Hafler-Darson just having a little bit of a moment out there as well. as he just has to keep on pushing. And it's interesting, the marbles also affected Daniel Thomas and Edward Shelley when they had that slow run there. It just goes to show, even with the driving, even with the timeout there, it's just so tough to get anything down through NASCAR 3 and 4 one last time, though, to the chicane for the penultimate time. Dallas Pataska is going to take the white flag. I don't think he cares about the fastest lap. All he cares about right now, Jake, is making sure he crosses that line, sees the white flag from Barney, and just goes, thank you very much. I am going to waltz this win back home.
White flag out then here at Charlotte. A big spin in front of him. Jeff Schmeier gets himself sideways and in the wall. Pataska avoids it. And so that could have been the last trip up on the final lap of this race. It is not going to trip up as necessary as they work themselves through. Keep an eye out then for Vavrosky. He's got traffic in front of him as well. He can't afford any issues with Garen Batten 13 seconds back. But working into turn number 7, we talk about drivers who have their one shot over the course of this year to jump into a different region where they think they can score points better and say, I can do better than what is going on. Dallas Pataska has been on a part-time schedule this season, 13th in the championship in Americas, comes over to Euro and says, out of 12, they haven't been able to catch me. They haven't been able to stop me. They haven't been able to take a lap off of me. And now down through towards the final chicane because Dallas Pataska works himself in, hits his marks one lap's time. A demonstration from Dallas as he wins at Charlotte.
Absolute fantastic driving from Dallas, and Hafler Darson will get that P2 after the battle with Ravosky. You've got to have it handed off to Ravosky. For so long he had that P2, for so long he was battling. He'll have to come home with the third. Not what he wanted, but it's still a podium, and behind it's going to be big time for Batten. But interestingly, Daniel Thomas has lost P5 right behind them, and Shelley, before they come to braking for the final chicane, takes that P5 away from Thomas. I don't know if that was on purpose. I'm not sure why Daniel lifted off there. I can't see a slowdown. Something must have happened.
I don't see him hitting the wall anywhere either. So for me, I think that's just the case there for Daniel Thomas of saying, what a battle we have had. He might have gone a little bit too aggressive down there at the second part of the chicane. And so the position gets given back to Edward Shelley, and so they change their places up. But today, a day of unreal driving from so many in this field, but they'll give the props to 24, who proved that he was pretty much universal here today in the way he got his result. Everyone is over the line, so we'll have the chance to run through your official classified results here today from the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Dallas Pataska is your winner. 2 hours, 34 minutes and 18 seconds. He was on course to lap everyone before the safety car came out. Michael Hafler-Darson will finish off in second at just 8.5 seconds adrift, with Trevor Vavrosky in third. He will still gain points in his championship effort, with Garen Batten minimising the damage in P4, last car on the leading lap. Edward Shelley, a lap down, would get there just ahead of Daniel Thomas, with Robert Northway finishing off in 7th ahead of David H. Baker. Tom Guest would finish 9th. Your top 10, 3 laps down, would be Kyle Graham.
We get to the second page. Gary Thomas also 3 laps down. He'll finish in 11th, and Wayne Hutchinson will be in 12th. And then Jeff Smyer was down 4 today and 4 laps down in 13th, with Joshua Hampton in 14th. Hakan Schutt will take that 15th, 5 laps down, and Sebastian Jackson will be the last man still driving in 16th. Ray Partridge had to take a retirement earlier in 17th, and Stephen Verveyen, with a very heavy hit, will be the last car and the first car to retire. Bill Daly just decided that he wanted to put his car in the pit lane while he controlled everybody. Let's just say he was the pace car today.
Very much so. The opportunities for many have come through. We will take a chance to talk with some of our drivers. Third overall today, and your championship leader, Trevor Vavrosky, here with us right now. And Trevor, in terms of today, you've got some quick drivers jumping in like Dallas Pataska. You've got drivers like Robert Northway who come in from the international region. But critically for you, manage the drivers behind you in the championship, and that's what you got out of today in third place.
Yeah, overall, can't be too upset with a third. A little bummed that I couldn't get the second place, but I mean, as soon as you see Dallas Pataska's name, show up for a NASCAR on a road course race, you kind of know you're all racing for second. So ultimately, it was a good fight with Michael and Edward throughout the race, and yeah, third place will be just fine as far as championship goes.
Talk about this new layout then here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. 2025 layout gives a little bit more of an overtaking opportunity, but really I think the key for you, especially in the late stages, how critical was it managing the tires over the long run?
So that was my key mistake. I felt like I did a really good job on those first two stints before the caution. I was really charging late, especially that opening stint on Michael and Edward. I think my tires were in a better place, and then that caution came out, and Dallas hadn't pit for new tires, and I was like, maybe, just maybe, he's human, and I can maybe try and stay close enough to force a mistake. But ultimately, I ended up overrunning my tires and heating them up too much, and paid the price when Michael ended up running me back down. So yeah, it was definitely a little bit of a mistake there. Definitely getting a little too hot, and really struggled with turn 7 this whole week. So ultimately, that's what bit me.
So you go from a Mustang to a Mustang potentially next time out. Bathurst 500. How are you feeling about tackling the mountain?
Oh my gosh, my hands hurt today. I'm sweating like crazy. That race is only going to be even more physical. It's usually one of the longest races we end up doing is whatever V8 supercar type race we end up running. So it's going to be physical, but I'm looking forward to it. I think I can hopefully get another top 5.
And we'll wish you the best of luck with it. Trevor Vavrosky joining us then, a third place overall today. Waltzing down the paddock over to victory lane is Craig King, who is stood by with your winner, Dallas Pataska.
Yeah, here with Dallas Pataska. And Dallas, when it lined up, it looked like it was just a one-horse race today. And it looked like it was just a walk in the park out there for you today.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say it wasn't quite like that. I know I had some large gaps there, but we put in a lot of prep for this. Well, not necessarily this round specifically, but back on our team, we've been working on the road course package quite a bit. So it's nice to see it kind of come to fruition and turn out well. I mean, honestly, I was hooked up from the green. It's one of the best road cars I've driven, so we really have it in a good spot where it's really enjoyable to drive, even despite some of the big curb strikes that this track presents. But yeah, I wasn't expecting the yellow. We had one in International that kind of threw things for a loop a little bit. I thought with the smaller field, maybe we'd get by without one. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, but it still worked out. That was a bit of a tricky situation, but we made it through and persevered.
Now, talk me through the idea of using your one race of the season to come over to Europe, because you're an American champion driver, and you've come over here to the Europe for the Roval. Is it because of just a road course? 'Cause again, the Americas, they are doing a Darlington race. Is it because you felt more that you were going to get the better result here on the Roval, or is it just more to the fact of Darlington is probably a weaker oval for you?
I would say neither. I'm just going for wins. I really enjoy this combination of having a stock car like the next gen on road courses. It's one of my favorite combinations in all of racing, and not even just cup car, but trucks, Xfinity, just a stock car on a road course. Something about it just speaks to me. So there's not a lot of opportunities to run a full length race with a field like this throughout the year. So anytime it comes up, I try to do everything I can to make that race. It's just a ton of fun.
And we talk about fun. Let's talk about as well the new Roval layout here at Charlotte. First month it's been on the sim, so no longer do we go up the hill and do a quick right and left. It's now straight on to this new complex at 6 and 7. what has the change been like for you? Has it been a change that you've adjusted and enjoyed more, or do you prefer the old layout because it has really changed the complexion of that infield?
I think NASCAR has been cooking, or whoever decided to make the change, because I remember the old layout. I've unfortunately have a number of laps on it, and I didn't like it. But this section just feels and drives a lot more like a NASCAR kind of Roval layout should. That high-speed section, the high-speed right into the hairpin, I feel like that's a great addition. I wasn't sold on it at first, but then once I kind of figured out what line to run and raced it a little bit, like, I'm sold on it. Like, these changes are very positive. I thought it was a lot of fun. I mean, I got to lap 109 and was like, all right, we're already done. So it's a lot of fun to drive. Positive change. Look forward to doing more here.
Just before you let you go, we know you're on a little bit of a smaller schedule this season. 2 races left in the season, the Bathurst 500 and the Japanese Grand Prix. Will we be seeing you in the last two races of the season, or is this it for you this season?
It's a good question, honestly. I don't think I'll do the Japanese round. It'd probably be a lot of fun, but those kinds of cars I'm not that interested in, to be honest. But the Bathurst round, it's 50-50. I've ran that round before. I've won that round before. It's a similar type of combination to this, where tire management goes a long way. You're kind of slipping and sliding around the whole time, and that's what you're fighting around, and that's what I like. So we'll see. It'll probably depend on my schedule, and if I can fit it in and, do the necessary prep that I do for anything that I race. Yeah, I'll probably race it, but otherwise I want to make sure I'm putting my best foot forward.
Well, you put your best foot forward definitely today. Almost a flag to lights, or lights to flag today for the victory. Dallas, congratulations once again on the victory, and maybe we will look forward to seeing you later in the season.
Sounds good, guys. Thank you.
Dallas Pataska there, Jake, winner today in dominant fashion. I believe you're still down there in the paddock. I think you may have Michael Hafler-Darson there just for the end up on the podium.
Yeah, second place on the podium. Michael, a case today for you of a lot of chasing needing to be done, and a lot of it down to long stint maybe being a little bit more troublesome. We saw you drop back a little bit in the early stages, but you had the chance to really fight back in the second half of that race.
Yeah, no, the first stint for me, like I've done like the bare minimum of practice laps here. I've not been enjoying the combo at all. So I wasn't expecting anything, and then obviously starting second in qualifying, I was like kind of a bit nervous, like more pressure on me. Then the first stint I ruined my tires on lap 10, 11 something, and yeah, I just had to defend the whole first stint, and was talking to my teammates who were kind of coaching me through the race, and they said like try just basically lift and coasting everywhere, and that seemed to find me some time. So yeah, I mean, P2 in the end, I'll take it after this race and after my own expectations coming into it.
So talk us through your expectations of running this second half of the season. We know that you've been jumping in, trying to just get as much experience as you possibly can. So now that you're gaining that experience at the last over round of the season, do you feel like you are now in a better position to tackle 2026?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like the last races I've done here, it's been a learning curve. Obviously, with majors being a bigger event than normal leagues, so to say, that run like once a week or so. It's been a learning curve getting into like how everything works around majors, but getting into it now, it's really fun, and I'm enjoying like every race. So yeah, for sure, I feel ready for 2026 now.
So if you're ready, how do you feel about getting ready for a Bathurst 500 next time out?
Ooh, I absolutely love the Gen 3. Me and my teammates have been driving a lot in that car recently. We did the 1K now a few weeks ago and went really well, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, we'll wish you the best of luck when that comes around. Michael Hafler-Darson, joining us then and picking up a second place finish overall. That will bring the curtain down for racing action here from the Charlotte Motor Speedway on the Global Sim Racing channel. Massive thanks to the team who has got this done for you today. From Daniel, from Craig, and from Dougie, my name is Jake Sperry. You've still got a lot more great sim racing to come along on the horizon next week. But of course, you've got October 26th in the back of the mind, Mount Panorama, and that will be a huge battle then over the course of the laps that we have there. It will be an 81 lap affair to get it sorted. Porsche Owners Club will return Monday night, Tuesday morning, depending where you are, over at Interlagos. And then, of course, on Thursday, you'll have the Skip Barber Race Series over at Suzuka, not Sunday as it says there on the graphic. And then you've got the Grand Prix Legends heading to Rudskogen, then over in Norway, and IMSA Vintage will be jumping over to Jerez in the not too distant future. But as championships go, it is one where you just have to race what is there in front of you. Don't rely on everyone else saying this is going to be how it goes or this isn't. You just have to play your cards right, and it is working perfectly for Trevor Vavrovsky. A small increase in the championship with 2 races to go. We'll see you for the mountain as they will challenge their next great battleground.
This is iRacing.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Anybody really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.